And ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the prosecution is not going to get that man today. No, because I'm going to get him.
This is the Hagmann and Hagmann Report for today. It's Monday, February 4th, 2013. This is a live broadcast. I'm Doug Hagmann. I'm the co-host. With me is my son, Joe Hagmann. He's the co-host as well. Together, we are the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. And folks, for the next 3 hours, you're going to hear 3 hours of unbiased and uncensored news, analysis, and information you need to know in these perilous times. We broadcast each and every weeknight live from 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern Time. You can find us at our home base at HomelandSecurityUS.com, and you can watch us as well as we're simulcast in the high-def video on the Christians United Broadcasting Network. I want to thank each and every one of you for joining us, and thank you very much for your belief, your trust in us as we walk through this treacherous minefield of events together. And Joe, welcome to tonight's program. Glad you're in studio tonight. We had a little issue last night with some sound problems, so I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, some really weird sound problems. But it was good that we had brought in Mr. Evenson and Mr. Quayle on, that they could stay on live while we were dealing with our issues. As we tried to call back into Blog Talk Radio with Skype, and we heard an audio recording of automatic weapons fire. It was actually an audio tape loop, if you will, of twice.
Of machine gun type fire or automatic weapons fire that was inserted into our audio stream, which some people heard, some people didn't. It did not transfer to the archive that I could see, but it was odd. So, isn't that interesting?
Very. We got a lot of news we're going to get into tonight. If you guys missed it last night, we had Mr. Greg Evenson and Steve Quayle on. We talked about a number of things. The topic was Blueprint for Destruction, lifting the veil of government tyranny, I think. And a lot of what we talked about was these military assaults, unannounced military assaults taking place across the country. And we got news on new assaults and invasions of urban areas in the U.S. by the military today as well. So these are continuing.
There is a lot of news that we're going to touch on, but before we do, we were preparing for the show, Joe and I, and we were looking at where all of the news that we're about to get into leaves us, you and me, Joe and I, the listeners, the people listening in the United States, Canada, France, Germany, Australia, New Zealand, or wherever. And the one thing that we're able to look at, or the one thing that we found to set the stage for tonight's show and perhaps for all future shows, there was an individual, Dr. Carol Quigley. We've referenced Dr. Quigley before. Carol Quigley is the head or the mentor, if you will, of the Clintons and a lot of the power structure in Washington, D.C. He wrote the book Tragedy and Hope. Well, one of the contributions which this Carol Quigley perhaps made unintentionally in writing Tragedy and Hope was to help the ordinary American, you and me, realize the utter contempt which these power brokers have for us as ordinary people. Human beings are being treated en masse as helpless puppets on an international chessboard where giants of economic and political power subject them to wars. I mean, we're being subjected to wars, revolutions, civil strife, utter confiscation of wealth, subversion, indoctrination. manipulation, and outright deception, just as it suits their fancy, and their concocted schemes for world domination. And this is no longer a conspiracy theory. This mass of world humanity, us, we are the source of latent power, which terrorizes the establishment, as well it should be. There's a constant fear that the masses might awaken, that you and I might awaken, and frustrate these gigantic and perverse schemes, particularly where they have acquired an education and accumulated a little bit of property. Now, we're trying to educate the public, and we're trying to, in doing so, we're hoping that education does terrify the establishment. And of course, the accumulation of property, whether it's real property or whatever, I mean, that also is the antithesis of this international chess game, if you will. This is what is taking place in America today, and it's not just America though. It's in every country, every free country throughout the world. So if you're listening to this in Australia or in France, you understand it's happening to you as well. So once again, there's a constant fear that the masses, you and me, are going to awaken and frustrate these gigantic perverse schemes of the power brokers, of the globalists. And right now, the mass of humanity in America, we, at this point, constitute the great and overwhelming majority of the people, called the middle class. Now, of course, the middle class does exist in other countries, but just to talk about America, middle class right now first. The Dr. Quigleys of the world, the Professor Quigleys of the world, as we've already seen, they leave no doubt as to the menace which we as middle class people represent to them. Now, it was once the great American dream to make as many people part of this great middle class because it was recognized to be the backbone of our society. We were the producers. The middle class, the most important segment of the population in maintaining a progressive, not progressive in political terms, but progressive, excuse me, in terms of progress itself, self-governing, secure, and freedom-loving people. But if you're trying to set up a dictatorship like this regime, and even previous regimes have done, the middle class is the enemy. We're the enemy. And this group will resist a dictatorship. The middle class traditionally will resist a dictatorship. At least we will do so if we know what is taking place, what is happening. And that's the important thing, and that's why we exist, in our opinion, is to educate people, to let them know what's going on. So this is the fact of life, which the super rich, the collectivists of the establishment face today. Everything that they do must be accomplished in an atmosphere of propaganda and deception. And Joe and I were talking about this again, before the show. Everything is done under propaganda and deception. Otherwise, they keep running, the puppet masters keep running into a groundswell of resentment and resistance as they try to compel the middle-class Americans to give up their independence, our guns, our freedoms, our property, our constitutional prerogatives, our rights. Then what's the current strategy, though, of this tyrannical establishment? Well, just very briefly, folks, it's two-pronged. And you've heard this before. In fact, Glenn Beck's talked about this, and others have talked about this as well. Remember this: top-down, bottom-up. Pressure from the top and pressure from the bottom. The current tactic right now is to create revolution, violence, and extremely serious social dislocation. This at the bottom, while creating an ever-increasing pressure from the top for this monolithic power by demanding that the executive branch of the federal government be given massive power to solve all of our problems. Aren't we seeing this now today? where the federal government is actually consolidating power. Look at the executive orders of Obama. Well, these demands are made in the form of proposed social legislation. And haven't we heard about this before? Social legislation involving the expenditure of just billions upon billions and trillions of dollars each year. Look, experience is not teaching us, of course, that the dissipation of all of this wealth has not been solving our problems. It's merely permitted the tyrannical government to use these tremendous resources that we have created, the middle class, just the common person, to build up its machine of well-paid globalist lackeys, if you will, and to reward their abject obedience with tremendous salaries for loyalties and their loyalty to carry out policies and the dictates of this globalist agenda. And this is occurring on practically every dimension of the federal government and every country in the West or representing the West, regardless of where you might be geographically. If you're free, this is what's taking place. And many fine, well-meaning, otherwise well-meaning people support the broad ramifications of social legislation because they think that they're supporting a good cause. And you hear social justice and you think, well, okay, most people think it's a good cause. No, it's not. It's not. It's a code word.
Yeah, not the way they define it.
That's right.
Social justice, in its terminology and its the way it sounds, is a good idea if the definition wasn't skewed by the government.
Exactly. And Americans, we're losing control of our own destiny, and this is a problem. I mean, and not only Americans, but all free people in the West, whether you're in France, Germany, Ireland, Scotland, wherever. You're losing control of your destiny because of the agenda of the globalists. And many of the people who have been calling our, national problem solvers have been secretly engaged in actual problem making, and that's the Hegelian dialectic. And folks, if you don't know what the Hegelian dialectic is, certainly research that because that's important to what is taking place today. Again, our research, that is, Joe and I, as we do, and we're so fortunate, by the way, and we're so thankful and we're blessed because being a father-son investigative team, we're blessed to be able to do this research. We're finding that the Hegelian dialectic is really playing a big part in everything that's taking place, but we've watched the deterioration of the American political structure it's happening right before our very eyes. It's been absolutely amazing to see how many of our so-called problems have been manufactured or even exaggerated or aggravated by Washington, by their meddling and manipulation. And if it's not Washington, it's at the state level. And if it's not at the state level, it's at the local level. And it's on the progressive side. We see problems like racial problems, racial minorities, and the need to expose these minorities to greater opportunities, of course. That's the buzzword and a lot of the buzz phrases. Well, that problem, in fact, needed to be solved, but what happened in real life? Washington got involved so deeply, they practically promoted it into the explosive tinder for another civil war, and it's taking place again today. There's the quotation, there's nothing new under the sun. We're seeing the same thing right now. There's nothing new under the sun. So we've had the problem, and we have the problem today of rising crime rates. And we've got to stop the rising crime rates, although when we say rising crime rates, the rising lack of morality, I suppose would be a better term, because the actual crime rates are falling. But that said, when you throw the government into it, and what do we get? We get these insane gun laws, for example, these insane gun ban laws, as if that's going to affect the crime rates. Of course, it's not. They never have and never will. They are actually setting the stage, the government that is, for the greatest wave of violence and lawlessness this country has ever known. And this is part of what we're going to get into tonight, too, from my DHS source who I had a lengthy conversation with yesterday. I'll be revealing some information tonight about that conversation. I did not get into, I got into one piece of information about that yesterday, and I'll reiterate that today, but a little bit more about that as well tonight. But look, we've had this problem of moral decay, and something needed to be done about it, of course. The globalists, these brain busters, they came up with a combination of sex education and so-called sensitivity training, which just exacerbated the problem into a contagion of totally permissive decadence and moral degeneracy. Think about that, folks. Think about how they attempted to fix the problem of pornography, of obscenity.
Oh, yeah. And I saw a news article today on Drudge Report. I don't know if it's still up here. I'm not sure where it's from. This is a study by from the Washington Examiner. Watching pornography boosts support for same-sex marriage. See, a new scholarly analysis suggests more straight guys, especially those who are less educated, watch pornographic videos. The more they warm to same-sex marriage. The reason, pornography opens their mind up to accepting non-traditional sexual situations.
Non-traditional sexual situations. You won't find that on Leave It to Beaver or I Love Lucy or the Lucy Show, whatever that was back in the day, or the Andy Griffith show. I can't talk tonight, apparently. But non-traditional sexual situations. The last thing here, we had a problem. We still do have a problem of subversion by a foreign-based conspiracy. And that's exactly what this is. But the problem is, in what we're seeing the problems right now, it's subversion by a foreign-based conspiracy, which has brazenly announced that our American society must be overthrown and our kids, our children, are required to live under its flag. And that, of course, is the flag of one New World Order. Grassroots political pressure compelled the Congress to pass a number of security laws. Establishment-dominated forces in the executive and judicial branches of the government have totally nullified them. Look, our descendants, they're going to reap this terrible whirlwind from all of this. And I do suspect that our kids, our children and grandchildren are going to wonder why the adults of this generation were incapable of realizing what was taking place right before them.
Yeah, and I want to, if you don't mind, stop you right here.
Fine.
Give you just give the listeners a quick clip of part of this, moral decay of our society. Okay. This coming from our president.
Next week, the board of the Boy Scouts of America is going to vote on whether to end their national ban on gays in scouting. Should scouting be open to gays?
Yes.
Why so?
Well, because I think that, my attitude is that gays and lesbians should have access and opportunity the same way everybody else does in every institution and walk of life. And, the Scouts are a great institution that are promoting young people and exposing them to, opportunities and leadership that will serve people for the rest of their lives. And I think that nobody should be barred for that.
So there you have it. The President of the United States advocating that homosexuals be allowed to be part of the Boy Scouts of America. And this article from the Washington Post shares Obama's sentiments on the issue. The Boy Scouts, no-brainer decision on gays. The Boy Scouts of America has set the vote Wednesday on whether to scrap its original ban on gay membership and to leave decisions on openly gay members up to individual troops. As the Post noted Friday in an editorial, this cautious plan is not exactly bold moral leadership. Mm-hmm. What James Dale proposed on MSNBC's Hardball last week, the Boy Scouts of America should not allow discrimination anywhere in its ranks. It makes more sense. You can't have children in one troop thinking that discrimination is acceptable and Scouts in a neighboring troop to think that discrimination is unacceptable, said Dale. The anti-gay policy, which was top-down, I think the non-discrimination needs to be top-down as well. It goes on to say, since the sponsors have come under intense pressure to get the Boy Scouts to change its policy, a grassroots coalition of parents of gay scouts and gay parents who want to be involved in their communities by participating in scouting has added to the clamor for change. Meanwhile, according to a Reuters study, youth membership in the Boy Scouts has dropped 21% since 2000. Adult leader membership has fallen 14%. And it goes on to say, no matter what Boy Scouts decide Wednesday, it is intolerable. It's intolerable. Ban on gay members is on the way out. The country has changed, and it has changed on the issue of homosexuality in particular. And an example of just how times have changed, when asked yesterday in a pre-Super Bowl interview if gays should be allowed to participate in scouting, President Obama said yes. He went on to say that gays and lesbians should have access and opportunities to the same way everybody else does in every institution and walk of life. That's a no-brainer position the Boy Scouts of America should wise up and adopt.
But see, they're attempting to redefine an American institution, not reinforce the values of the American institution. It's one thing to have someone with a sexual leaning, but of course at that age, the age of Boy Scouts, the traditional age, this can only add confusion. And why, Joe? Why would and people might say, well, this is really not hard news. This is kind of soft news. No, it's definitely hard news. It's news because look at what look at the moral degradation that's taking place, and look at the redefinition of churches. Yeah,
from man and woman to two persons. Well, in the church is accepting this, and homosexuality is a sin, and we should not hate or persecute an individual because of the way they live. If they're living that way, that is a choice that they make.
Right.
But we should not open up our institutions like churches. It should not be discrimination if churches who should follow the Scripture, strict religious laws, and they should not be allowed to impose their will on religious institutions, whether they're Catholic, Protestant, Muslim, Jewish, doesn't matter.
Doesn't this mean that if you are a Christian, let's say a Catholic or whatever, a Christian denomination that is against the homosexual union or the homosexual, does this mean that you must abandon your religious beliefs in favor of the tolerance of this redefinition of what normal is?
Yes, and you can see that through Obamacare. I was looking at a story earlier, and I'll see if I can find it again, where they're talking about nuns having to be covered for contraceptive, after morning pills, and even abortion, possibly. Nuns must have birth control coverage, is the title of the article here. And it gets into, this is from the National Review, and it talks about...
Oh, that's a head-scratcher. I mean, I understand reality, but still, that's a head-scratcher.
The Obama administration has pulled a fast one. In its proposed rule to supposedly provide greater protections to non-house of worship religious organizations opposed to contraception, and actually ensures that contraception coverage will be provided to all religious employees, whether in a house of worship, a covenant, church, or school. In other words, the proposed rule expands the government's intrusion into religious affairs rather than reduces it.
Wow. Well, is it now, or are we not to the point now where we have to ask ourselves the question: is the sheer size and the power of these globalists, of these super rich, the super rich network, this globalist agenda, this Illuminist, this Luciferian satanic type framework? And I don't think that that's an overreach in terms of description, but Are they now too big and too powerful, too well entrenched in our government, in our social fabric to be overturned or even resisted effectively? I wonder about this. You know, the members of this global elite, the members of this, the puppet masters, the central bankers, they're going to go ahead and finance revolution on both sides. They're going to finance immoral depravity and social dislocation from the bottom and from the top, and squeeze out the normal, if I dare say normal, middle class, or the middle class, the very backbone of society in all countries.
Yeah.
And the last thing I just want to close it with this is, you know, what can we do about this right now? Is it too late? Well, some people think it is, but millions of people, millions of unsuspecting Americans, we've become brainwashed, and not only Americans, but people in the West, brainwashing. This, we believe there is still sufficient vitality among the believers, at least the Christians, the true Christians, the believers in God, to mobilize a very formidable wave of some hardcore resistance to this whole superstructure of a worldwide conspiracy.
And people need to understand, if their church is going along with the changes in society, if they're adapting and being tolerant and politically correct, you need to leave those churches.
Right.
Start your own church.
Or even pray in
find a church that will stick to the true scriptures, or if you can't find one, just do it yourself. That's the best means of communications between you and the Lord, is praying and reading scriptures. He's the only one that can give you the answers you need. He's the only one with the solutions to your problems, not a pastor, not a talk show host, not TV personalities, not celebrities. No one but you and the Lord.
Right. And that I obviously we agree. You know, but the closing thoughts, my closing thoughts on this opening of the program here is, we urgently need to be united and expose the conspiracy of this globalist control, because we believe, and we were talking again earlier about this is so real, and the objectives are so tragically close. They're so close to achieving their purposes. You know, if we continue to educate the people, or attempt to educate people about what is taking place through news, through a biblical worldview, through hitting to the very heart, the very soul, the very crux of the core of the issues that no one is touching.
And the news every day now is so important and so relevant to how the world is changing.
Yes.
Day to day, so much, and in such extreme fashions, to where, you know, things that are being proposed now publicly 15 years ago were talked about in secret meetings where if you spoke about them, you were a conspiracy theorist, let alone talked about the ideas that they were trying to promote, even though the people that were promoting these ideas did so openly through other channels like books and, memorandums and different things and publications. And they have their own network of magazines and newspapers, as they control all communications in the U.S., pretty much. And now we're seeing,
much they do.
as yesterday's show title said, the veil is being lifted, and that's something we're talking about. The veil of their plans, whether it's on purpose or not. Zbigniew Brzezinski said a couple of years ago that part of the problem of implementing their agenda sooner was a global mass awakening, political awakening. And he went on to say it used to be easier to control 1 million people than to kill 1 million people. So now it's easier to kill 1 million people than to control them.
Well, that's one thing that I was talking with someone earlier today from another country who said, you know, they understand why people, for example, like Alex+Jones had gone up against Piers Morgan the way he did, and sometimes the way Steve Quayle says the things he does, is because no longer are these puppet players can they be fought with being nice or being diplomatic, because they are so cold right now and so focused on their objective that just playing nice and being nice on now, I'm not of course advocating just rude behavior but you've got to shock people into awareness, and that's what that was a discussion that I had today. Shocking people into awareness at times is much needed.
And it people call it offensive or shocking or bold, but it's you want to be biblically correct rather than politically correct.
That's true too. But you've got you can't. In addition to being biblically correct, you have to be strong in the Word and strong in your convictions, and to make people realize that look, the fight has to be taken to a different level, especially with our country at stake and our moral high ground and moral absolutes at stake here.
Yeah.
The violations are so egregious to Christians right now and the people of God.
And I had a thought the other day of people who have dreams. People all seem to have this same dream where they find themselves speaking or naked in front of a group of people in their dream.
For you, though, that wasn't a dream. That was...
Unfortunately, I don't have dreams like that, but it seems a lot of people do. Well, and that got my mind thinking, on Judgment Day, we're all going to be spiritually naked before the Lord.
That's right.
Everything will be, that we've done in our lives, the sin, will all be in front of us. We'll have no excuse for anything that we've done that we haven't repented for. And people talk about the humiliation they feel in their dreams and the things that, they feel when those uncomfortable experiences arise. Well, multiply that by a number you can't even imagine, right? And just, that's what we're talking about. Where the whole point of this show, the whole point of what we're doing is just trying to lead people to the Word of God so they can get an understanding of what's going on for themselves.
That's correct.
And on Judgment Day, it's going to be decided if you go to heaven or if you go to hell. It's one of two places. The way to heaven is very narrow. The gates of hell are very wide.
That's right. And we all want, look, eternal salvation is our objective. That's for sure. And we have to work at that every day. We really do. So some of the things that we're going to be talking about tonight, folks, you heard about the murder of Chris Kyle, the 38-year-old man in Texas, the former U.S. Navy SEAL, the author of American Sniper. Of course, you heard about him.
We talked about this briefly last night, but we should go over it again. Known as the deadliest sniper in the world, Chris Kyle, was shot and killed at point-blank range by a veteran suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder at a Texas gun range.
And folks, you have to understand what is taking place here with this PTSD designation. And by the way, in addition to Chris Kyle, I just want to summarize this too. You had Keith Ratcliffe, 32 years old. He was found dead in his office from a gunshot wound to the back of the head. That was not self-inflicted back on January 3rd, 2013, just a month ago. He was the producer for the popular FPS Russia, the firearms channel on YouTube, with 3.4 million subscribers and more than 540 million video views. And then, of course, John Noveski, the 36-year-old gentleman who mysteriously died in a car crash on January 4th, the day after Keith Ratcliffe. Look, while most of the SEALs have died in military combat or unexplained helicopter accidents over the last, 4 years, the recent deaths of Chris Kyle and other high-profile Second Amendment advocates have certainly raised questions since the war on our Second Amendment right began. Really, things changed. The complexion changed after Newtown in December. And we have to look at this. Obviously, our hearts go out to the families of all the victims of Newtown, but all the victims, too, including Mr. Kyle and Ratliff and Noveski and their families. But there are certain strange, odd occurrences with all of these deaths. We're looking at these. Joe and I spent a lot of time looking through these, trying to reconcile things. And ladies and gentlemen, we do feel at this point, at least I do, and Joe and I are running parallel investigations, but when we're looking at these, there appears to be, dare I say this, a hits,
yeah,
or programming. You know, we've talked last week, the week before, we mentioned MK Ultra and Monarch Mind Control, and people roll their eyes and say, "Oh, come on, are you really serious?" But like I mentioned last night, and I've mentioned in the past, you've had a CIA operation in mind control for well over 30 years, more than likely closer to 60 years now, where 6% of their operating budget went to mind control techniques and creating Manchurian candidate type people, cutouts, if you will, operational in 44 universities across the United States and involving numerous doctors and numerous drugs. Ladies and gentlemen, there's something wrong here. And to dismiss things, you know, it's said, and in fact I was doing some, and people have been saying, well, where in the world are you? You know, are you writing anymore? I mean, but the bottom line is, you know, once is an occurrence, twice could be a coincidence, but 3 times is an enemy action. And let's look at it that way, because I think that we are seeing the opening salvos, or perhaps seeing the salvos now, of enemy action. And you say, yes, you know, go ahead and say, oh, you're conspiratorial.
Well, I mean, when it comes to the MK Ultra programs, it's not conspiratorial when it was brought before the attention of Congress and they shut it down, or attempted to at least. It's not conspiratorial when you see whether it be just right doctors taking people, messing with their minds to the point that they can go out and do things like this. Either way, there is something going on that is changing people, and it's not just people that we see in the news doing these shootings, doing these different things. There are smaller behaviors, and people can see it in their families and their friends.
That's right.
They're moving. It's either their hearts are getting colder, they're moving further away from what they're supposed to, or they're moving closer in the right direction. And it seems like the movement of the people and their souls are faster, one way or the other.
Boy, that's say that again.
People their behaviors are changing in a much more rapid pace than I've ever seen before.
But their souls are moving in one direction or another.
Right. They either seem to be turning colder.
Right.
You know,
okay.
More anti-person, more anti-godliness.
Right.
Or they're moving toward the Spirit of the Lord.
And I must say this, with the help of one very dear listener to this program, Marianne, and through Joe and I, we have actually gone through numerous, and I mean numerous books, and books that are out of print and have been out of print, documents, PDF files, or files that were turned into PDF documents that have been put on servers or put on disks about mind control, about the Monarch mind control programs, and about which has led us from mind control into a more of a strange world with Walt Disney and Alice in Wonderland, you know, the Wizard of Oz, and people think, okay, you've really lost it now, but to see a lot of government-sanctioned documentation about this,
yeah,
are you serious?
Listen to this. We knew about the West Point document. We talked about it, but there's a good take, a good article written today that really puts it into perspective. It was written on the 2nd. The Combating Terrorism Center at West Point says opposition to a New World Order is terrorist activity. Okay.
And you know what, Joe? You know what we missed? We both missed until it was pointed out to me by I think it was Bob out of Idaho who sent me this email. He watched, and I'm almost embarrassed because in Western New York, in Clarence, New York, they had that meeting about the guns, about the okay. Well, one of the gentlemen there, and this was on YouTube. There's a 34-minute unedited video of this meeting in Clarence, New York, which is outside of Buffalo. Actually, it's just east of Buffalo, a town east of Buffalo, about 10 miles. But one of the gentlemen there held up that very document that you have, held up that document during that meeting and said, everyone needs to read this West Point document. And he was, he was applauded by the people there. But the people, there was off-camera conversation. It was caught by the audio, but not the video, where people were saying, what document is that? What is that? Okay, and then there was conversation about this West Point document, which you were talking about. Let's say that again, the document itself makes the belief.
Combating Terrorism Center at West Point label anti-federalists who oppose a New World Order, as well as members of far right-wing activist groups, also Christians, as potential terrorists. The U.S. and the headline is Combating Terrorism Center says opposition to a New World Order is terrorist activity.
Right. Now, who would say that, or who would do that? If a New World Order did not exist, or if that concept did not exist, wouldn't they say, fighting against this ideology or this nonsensical conspiratorial aspect of the New World Order? Of course not. But it does exist. It's been named by Bush and Cheney, Wolfowitz, everybody, Clinton, both Clintons, probably all three, including Chelsea by now. But see, this is what we're fighting against. We're fighting against this New World Order. And you people hear the word Illuminati, for example, and I always kind of chuckled and thought, oh, come on, But all of this is connected to the Illuminati, the globalists, the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds. This is real. And whether we believe it, for example, or whether your wife or your husband believes this, it doesn't matter. The people who are involved in this larger grand plan for world domination, it's important that they believe in it. And then you start getting into the deaths of, like, what, Princess Diana, and, holy cow.
And the real, tonight we named the show Propaganda versus Common Sense.
Right.
Because there is a lack of people who are able to think beyond the scope of what they are told, what they hear in society through friends or TV, especially TV, news, media, etc. And it seems like the people that are able to think for themselves are very much outnumbered in America by the people who would rather have their thinking done for them, whether it's on issues of sports or political events or even religion.
But see, 5 years ago or 6 years ago, 4 years ago, I don't know, that was me to a large extent. I was stuck on thinking, well, if it's Republican or not even that, if you wrap yourself up in the American flag, or if you do something because it's patriotic and because you love your country, I guess what was it? Anyone who questioned 9/11 was unpatriotic, and see, that kind of got me a little bit, and it ensnared me. If you were truly patriotic, you wouldn't ask questions about things like 9/11. You wouldn't think that the government would have any part. And by government, I'm going to go with Alex Jones's statement about what would he call it?
the criminal elements in the military-industrial complex.
Right, as opposed to government.
That's what President Eisenhower labeled the New World Order then.
Yeah, and so, why all this? Why rehash all this on February 4th, 2013? Why even talk about all of this? Because the reason for this, and this is my belief, and once again, as Joe and I put, hours of research into this, to look at the headlines and bring you the news that really matters. And the reason that this matters is because the foundation for what we're seeing today was built upon those checkpoints in history, like 9/11, like Oklahoma City, like the Kennedy assassination, like pick one, the Gulf of Tonkin, and so on and so forth. And you go back as far as the beginning of the 20th century. So this all ties together. And as you start unraveling that ball of yarn, and you see these little knots in the yarn that represent the checkpoints in history, you can see how this all fits together. And that's why we're talking about this and make reference to it, because it does build up to the present day news items. But this is just something that we're really, you've got to investigate this. And the more we see of it, it's, I don't want to say it's addicting. That's not the right word. But it really kind of sucks you in, and it grabs a hold of you. And it's like, wow, okay, I didn't realize, for example, I don't know, pick something about 9/11, and then that takes you to the first World Trade Center bombing, and then that takes you to other things, and then you meet people like Ted Gunderson, and so it just explodes.
I got to tell you, I watched a documentary over the weekend, rewatched a documentary that I had watched a few years ago called Fabled Enemies. It's about 9/11, but not about talking about what hit the buildings, what caused them to come down. It talked about all the intergovernmental connections, all the people, like Joe Biden meeting with the head Pakistani officer that wired $100,000 to the Muhammad Atta.
Was that Joe Biden that did that? Are you sure?
Yeah. And when one of the FBI agents that was being represented by Judicial Watch went to try to give information about how they were shut down from investigating leads that
Able Danger.
It was Able Danger, and there was another one.
Okay.
And Michael Chernoff was involved also.
Right.
We're sick and tired of hearing these conspiracy theories. There were multiple investigations from the FBI to the CIA that were shut down prior to 9/11, investigating the people who were actually, they said, carried out the attacks. Remember James Woods? He was on a flight.
Yes. Oh, very much so, yes.
He alerted the authorities, and they ended up saying that those were the people who also, those were the same people that said carried out 9/11.
And I remember the interview with James Woods. The FBI was at his house like 5 after 7 the next morning.
Yeah.
So,
we could go through, each layer of deception through 9/11 and take up a whole week, but...
well, I guess it's laying the groundwork for where we're at today.
Right. And now this West Point document goes on to say that it was established, the Combating Terrorism Center at West Point was established following September 11th because of the belief the strong initiative needed to prepare cadets for the new environments they would be headed into upon graduating the post-9/11 era.
Mm-hmm.
It provides a unique terrorism-based education since its creation. The program has received international recognition for its studies, reports, teachings on terrorism and terroristic threats. A new report from the CTC, however, suggests the far right-wing political activists, not radical Islamic groups, are the new terrorist threat in America, and even goes as far to say that those who oppose the New World Order are potentially terrorists. I find it very ironic the term New World Order is only spouted by those who want to create it. Those are the people who invented the term, the New World Order, One World Order. You hear people like Kissinger on the news saying it, Brzezinski, you see all different presidents.
And it rolls right off their lips, doesn't it?
Yeah. And, then they go on to say, well, if you believe in it, you're crazy. And you could, even to people who are not aware or won't believe in a New World Order, you can show them the videos of the presidents talking about it. You can show them the video of Bush 1 talking about their objectives being to give the United Nations all the power in the world.
That's very true.
But no, you're the crazy one for talking about it. But in reality, you are the crazy one for resisting it.
Right.
Because it is against their system, their world system. But thankfully, we have an out. And is the Lord.
That's right. And, you know, we can't, just to kind of supplement what you said there, you know, when we say we have an out, if we can just have it put, no.
We have a Savior. We have somebody who died for our sins so that we may be saved.
And the unification under Christianity, the one thing that Steve said that I agreed with yesterday, and maybe this was not during the show, it was off air, I think, you know, the different denominations of Christianity, because remember how, you know how we always talk about, well, we really need to unite under Christianity, and Steve said something to me, well, if that was possible, there wouldn't be so many denominations, different denominations with different with different doctrines. And that's perhaps correct theologically, but in a practical sense, boy, if we, the listeners and us, just as maybe nexus people, as a catalyst to help this unification, to fight this great beast that we're being encumbered, that is attempting to encumber us. Again, whether you're listening to this in France or Germany or elsewhere, or the United States, we need to unify and fight this and kind of have a unified front, because and the exposure and the education does go along with this. So I'm getting off track. I don't mean to do that. We do have a lot of hard. All right, folks. Now, can you hear me? Can people hear? Okay. All right. Right now, I think Joe is off. I'm on, and there we go. All right. Thank you very much. All right. Yeah, we're back. I must say this: we have been under some serious attacks here with our sound. We have done everything in our power. Of course, you folks know this. We've done everything in our power on this end. Yesterday was kind of unusual because when we did connect with the station, actually, we had a situation where on a loop, audio loop, there was sound of automatic gunfire. Now explain that. You know.
We're back live. Thanks, Troy, for getting us back up. I don't know what happened. I don't know if you heard gunshots in the background. He says no. Okay. But yeah, there is definite audio attacks. Thanks for being patient with us.
You know what? It's almost, and once again, we apologize because this is not amateur hour. We've got the best equipment that money can buy at this point, and the biggest lines, you know, out of our studio in terms of uploading, and of course we have connections with both AM and FM stations. So I don't understand what the problem is, but in the event that those people missed it, I'll be on Israel National Radio making friends with the Muslim community. It's the biggest station in the Middle East, and Pete Santilli. And then, Joe, you said we're going to be on Lori's show next week.
Yeah, Lori's Talk News Radio the 13th from 11 to midnight, right after our show.
Okay, all right. And then, of course, on Thursday, we're going to have Mr. Daniel Holdings.
Yes, he's the author of As the Darkness Falls, Things Are Not What They Seem.
All right.
And I have not read this book.
No, I haven't either. It just arrived today.
Okay.
So we will, but as I understand it, that's a mixture of fact and fiction. But Mr. Holdings does present the news in that book, as well as through his own testimony, through a scripture worldview, a biblical worldview. So it should be a very good show on Thursday. Things are happening really quickly. Now I know we're up against the top of the hour. We want to be pretty timely with that.
Yeah, we're going to take a break, but when we come back, we're going to hit some news. There's things going on as far as mortgages are concerned, and a new housing bubble warning. Also, we have news about tax hikes gas prices rising,
Yes.
Climate change news, taxing fresh air, drones, and more as we continue and taking your phone calls while we do so at 661-244-9839. We'll do that about halfway through the second hour, the next hour.
Right.
You're
Hi,
listening
folks.
to the
Doug
Hagmann
Hagmann here. You
Report.
might know me as...
Whoops, sorry. Pressed the wrong button. You're listening to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report today, this Monday, February 4th, 2013. And I always get screwed up with the Mondays, especially after a Sunday show, and I always think it's Tuesday. So
yeah,
that came out a little slow.
We're working on with time, so it's fun. But thank you for listening to our show, and I want to thank those listening. We also have a group in the diner in the Midwest. I'm going to say hello to you folks. More on that after the top of the hour. Hi, folks. Doug Hagmann here. You might know me as the co-host from the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, or as a frequent guest on Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie. If you're like me, you're tired and confused over today's headlines. You just don't know where to turn for accurate, concise information about really what's going on, what's truly going on in today's society. If you don't know where to turn for accurate, well-researched, and properly vetted news, I've got a suggestion. In fact, it's a requirement. Bookmark Canada Free Press. That's CanadaFreePress.com on the internet. It's just not for Canada. It's for news across the world. Judy McLeod, founding editor, has put together a vast array of talented writers like Kelly O'Connell, Daniel Greenfield, Dr. Eileen Johnson-Powell, a lot of guest columnists, very talented writers. Folks, that's Canada Free Press at CanadaFreePress.com. Now mobile friendly. Follow on Facebook, because without America, there is no free world.
You better wake up fast and listen to this, America. The Obama campaign has launched attack squads disguised as truth teams dedicated to intimidating and silencing all political dissent carried over the internet that criticizes the Marxist Obama. Truth squads specifically focused on covering up Obama's endless trail of lies, corruption, and subversion, and using the Gestapo power of our own government to police and censor the internet and shut down websites that dare to carry the real truth about Obama's Marxist coup. Remember the names of these Gestapo-style agencies at work right there in your neighborhood: KeepingHisWord.com, KeepingGOPHonest.com, and AttackWatch.com. KGB, SS, and Gestapo-style police-state gangster organizations at work to silence the important voices of patriot dissent, some of which have already been shut down by Obama's orders. Adolf Hitler would have been proud. We're the 21st century Tea Party patriots.
Ladies and gentlemen, I wanted to tell you about Freeze Dry Guy. He's our go-to person when we have questions about freeze-dried long-term food storage. He's our go-to guy. We have questions about what we should buy, or someone sends an email to us, hey, I've got a family of 3, I've got a family of 4, I need to start prepping. He's our go-to guy. If you go to HomelandSecurityUS.com, click on the banner in the upper right-hand column, and it takes you to the Freeze Dry Guy website. Now, folks, look, we don't have a lot of money, and we don't deal. I mean, the people we deal with, they're just average people, and we're not in the food selling business. What we are in, what we try to do is help others get prepared for what's coming. That said, I've talked to the Freeze Dry Guy many times, and had long conversations, and asked him about his products. Well, I'll tell you what, this month in February, he has got 2 great items for your grab-and-go bag. These are items I would suggest because I'm familiar with them, and both of them are great. The first one is chicken with rice, all right? Long-range patrol ration entrees. It's 100% freeze-dried foods made here in the United States using only the finest ingredients. This month, the February special, these 2 items, one being the chicken with rice, the second one being no refrigeration required ice cream, real ice cream. 1 case of Oriental-style chicken with rice entrees, normally $132 per case, which have 20 pouches in them. they yield 20 ounces of fresh food per pouch. Normally, $132. For listeners of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, $106. In 2 cases, $206. And the prices go down with the quantity. The ice cream desserts, eat it dry. Really? Believe me, it does taste good. Normally, $200 a case for 100 pouches. They're on sale now for $159. I got to tell you, it's not bad. It's actually pretty good. I would eat it. If I had one right now, I would eat it because it is good. No refrigeration needed, real ice cream. Anyway, they've got warehouse blowout sales for Hagmann and Hagmann listeners now through the 14th of February. Don't miss out. Tell them Doug and Joe Hagmann sent you for the discounts.
Hold on to your seat. The Hagmann and Hagmann flight is now taking off. Doug and Joe Hagmann have cleared the runway of TSA agents, jihadists, political crackpots, and global elitists. Now get ready for some real news. Here they are, Doug and Joe Hagmann.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to hour number 2 of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report this Monday, February 4th, 2013. For all of you who missed last night's show, we had special guest Greg Evenson and Steve Quayle on to talk about the military drills that were taking place across the United States unannounced. And we have more news on that today. As soon as I find this article.
All right, well, while you're doing that, I just want to say I got a couple of emails today. Let me answer them. During last night's show, I spoke about cyber assets, and if you were tuned in and missed that segment I had, information from my DHS source as of February 3rd, that was yesterday. Information is this: 2 days after the inauguration. 2 days after the inauguration, there were 3,575 federal, well, I don't want to say federal, 3,575 cyber assets, people working in the internet business full-time. Their focus, in fact, they became employed on January 23rd, 2013. Are you going to find this anywhere? No. Are you going to be able to FOI those or Freedom of Information request this? No. These people are working for, organizing for Obama, a 501c4 corporation based out of Illinois. But these cyber assets, 3,575 of them, are working full-time to do what? They're working full-time to penetrate, infiltrate Christian and political conservative forums, websites, message boards, to which is their priority, by the way, the Christian beliefs, to attack Christian beliefs, to push Romans chapter 13, and to also to marginalize anyone who believes in that Christianity is not compatible with other religions, or just attack Christians in general. The second priority is, of course, anyone who believes abortion is bad, and, of course, the third priority is this off of a list, by the way, seen by my DHS contact. The third priority would be to go after anyone who does not agree with any specific aspect of the Obama agenda, including but not limited to gun banning and outright confiscation, and the demonization, ultimately the demonization of people, anyone who is constitutionally and Bill of Rights minded. So 3,575 full-time people being paid for by the Organizing for Obama machine. Okay, that's what we've got. So, Joe, go ahead and continue with what you were saying about the other.
Marines and sailors to invade Jasper County for a training mission. About 150 Marines and sailors will hold a realistic urban training drill in Jasper County later this week as part of a pre-deployment training. The 26th Marine expeditionary unit will train with within the Ridgeland town limits Thursday through Saturday. Times and exact locations for the training are not being announced, according to Second Lieutenant Gerald Farrow. The training could take place at any time during those days, he said. Residents will likely see and hear military vehicles and aircraft. The Marines and sailors will be stationed on ships, and training is part of the certification for deployment to the Mediterranean and African shores, the general goes on to say. Participants will be in uniform and carrying weapons. Some exercises will be taking place at nights, and residents will hear popping or bullets as Marines fire blanks.
Oh, man.
The blanks do not pose a hazard for residents, Farrow says. The training has been coordinated with local county and state agencies and officials, including Ridgeland Police Fire Departments, according to Marine Corps News. Beginning today, Marines will notify residents face-to-face and door-to-door if the training will be near their property or home. Flyers with more information will also be available.
So I guess maybe we should learn how to be professional victims and hide under our desks. Remember that, folks? During the Cold War, when we do hear the popping and see the helicopters and the expeditionary forces come through. By the way, you can make that print bigger, man. I can't even see that. I don't know how you can, but
what are you talking about?
The print that you were reading there. I can barely see that. But anyway, wow, this is just, people have said that this has happened in the past, but I don't specifically recall. Any listeners recall this? Anybody in the chat room? Do you recall this type of urban warfare training in the past? I don't recall any of this, but I don't know.
Yeah, and to say, you're going to be hearing popping sounds, you're going to be hearing gunfire, but don't worry, we're just having military drills over your house. But as we talked about last night, how do we know the difference? How are we supposed to know the difference? And just let me say this. Let's say, just for instance, this is just completely hypothetical, military personnel or somebody in a military uniform is walking down your street at night, firing blanks. You don't know they're blanks. You come out of your house, they turn the gun at you. You shoot them.
Right.
In a court of law, would it be self-defense? I mean, even though your life wasn't in danger because they had blanks, you don't know they had blanks. You thought your life was in danger. By all reason of any expectation or common sense, any normal person would understand that, people shouldn't be out on the streets pointing guns at people firing blanks. You would think it's self-defense. So what I see is this can turn into a way that, they're coming after self-defense, the right to defend yourself against gunfire or any other types of criminal acts in the long run, especially against any type of authority figure.
Right. And one of the things that was said to me by my DHS contact is this about these drills, who said, now, prior to, I think the last write-up I had it included these drills, maybe not, but he did say this, and I received an email wondering just that, about is this to draw fire upon the military assets? And according to the DHS source that I spoke to, that is one of the objectives. Now think about that. Think about how demonic that is and how twisted that is. That's not the only objective, but it what they are attempting to do is to create another Waco, Ruby Ridge type of a situation. Why? To demonize further the people, because the only people who will fire on somebody like that, or fire on an aircraft or something if they feel that they're in danger, are the people that have the capabilities of doing so. And who does that? Who would have the capabilities of doing so? Well, an uninformed police officer or a prepper. And see, that's the demonization. There is an all-out assault now, attempt to marginalize those people with the assets, military, or not military, but the self-defense assets to fight against the possible military incursion. the tyranny. So this is part of the program, according to my DHS source. They want another standoff because to show the unreasonableness and the threat posed by the people like us.
And great comment here in our chat room, Eagle's Wings, be as wise as the serpent and as harmless as the dove.
I love that.
That is very accurate. As we see, all this craziness going on around us, and seeing a lot of division, and from all sides.
Well, they went brother
inside the Christian body, and we need to, even people who are persecuting us. It says in the Bible, we need to uplift each other, aside from being persecuted by people, especially people who are like-minded, who share the same beliefs, who want the same results, want everyone to be saved and have salvation and eternal life in heaven. We need to be uplifting each other. Nobody's perfect. Everybody makes mistakes. But to see the division even within the body of Christ, whether it's in a church or in a specific group or whatever, YouTube videos, different internet posts and threads, and even in our chat room sometimes we see division and the same tactics that I guess the enemies use against us, the marginalization, name calling even sometimes. I mean, we need to get above that. Time is short, in my opinion.
And even if time, Joe, even if time is not short with respect to what's happening, you don't know how long you have, the person listening to this. I mean, if you are listening to this and driving a car, if you're driving down the road, you don't know if you're going to make it home. I mean, it's as simple as that.
And as far as time is concerned, we're not guaranteed to wake up in the morning.
That's right. So look at it in a practical sense.
Yeah, and it says in the Bible, it says right in what is it, 2 Peter, that I think it's here that the Lord knows how to deliver the righteous and the unrighteous. I mean, he knows how to basically saying he knows how to take care of you as an individual, regardless, of what side you're on.
Right.
When your time comes, it comes, and we just need to be more like the Spirit of Jesus, more righteous, as the book says, and always striving to be righteous. All of us, none of us are perfect. Well, but we all need to try to be as perfect as we can be. And when we're not, we need to ask for forgiveness.
I was going to make a joke, but really, no jokes about it. We do. We've got to humble ourselves, and we've got to repent. Repenting is part of it, is it not? We've got to look. It's just because as like I mentioned, you could be listening to this program driving down the road and not make it home. You could not wake up in the morning from a heart attack or a stroke. Who knows? Any number of things could happen. But the bottom line is we have to. What's the most important thing? What's the most important thing? The most important thing is our eternal salvation.
Yeah,
it really is.
And
you've taught me. I mean,
eternal salvation, person, as an individual person, and also making sure that our people around us are having the same mindset, that you share the word of the Lord with them, that you keep them uplifted. You do what you can to take them out of whatever trials or help them with whatever they're going through. Treat people as you would like them to treat you, as the universal rule states.
That's right.
But back to what you said about a joke, I got a joke for you. Woman to watch for 2016. What happens if Hillary Clinton doesn't run in 2016? It's hard to imagine the presidential field without a woman contender. And here's one to keep your eye on. Homeland Security Secretary Janet Napolitano.
I thought that was a joke initially, but they're apparently they are doing some. I'm not even sure what they call them, but like focus groups almost on the Democratic or progressive parties is doing that to see what the possibilities are, what kind of Napolitano. Can you believe that? Holy moly! That would be like Janet Reno too. Come on.
It goes on to say that Napolitano is quietly making it known that she is considering the race and that there is a reason to take her seriously. She's positioning herself to be a no-nonsense, pro-business centrist who has worked as a governor as the state of Arizona.
Did a fine job there keeping the illegals out, I must say.
Yeah, and now she has apparently she has the ability, or it is in her hands, with the legalizing of the 11 million illegal immigrants, as they say.
But that should be 21 million. Right. She's got that she has a lot of weight in that decision-making process because of the logistical issues from a Homeland Security point of view.
And this is the land of the free, and it should be the land of the free.
And
immigration, people should be welcome here. But it's one thing to be welcome and become a citizen here, and versus coming here and becoming a citizen and being given all kinds of things that the citizens aren't given.
Right.
Who need it.
Right. And what they're trying to do, though, Joe, is they're trying to balkanize the United States of America. They're trying to dilute our society. They're trying to make us, how we are America, and as defined by our language, as defined by our heritage and our principles and they're trying to dilute this, and they're being very successful doing so. So to take really 20 million, not 11 million, but 20 million illegals, and make them
citizens. But more than that. We're talking about, which in some instances I can see this as being good if there was a true free market where but the people, immigrants who bring businesses over here get 7 years tax exemption. Sure, I don't disagree with that.
Cloud Piven on steroids? I
don't disagree with that if we had if everything was the way it should be.
Well, see, it's not.
But it's changed so much, and people get this sentiment that immigrants are. It's a horrible idea to allow immigrants to come here. Well, if that were the case, none of us would really be here. But I know America's different now, and obviously it's just a huge mismanagement of all the money, a huge change in the laws, and the reason that this is part of the division process. But we just have to remember, in this too are people who are going to exploit that situation, and that's the problem. And there's exploitation of the welfare system, there's exploitation of the disability system, there's exploitation of the immigration system, and to just give a blank pass to anybody and everybody, it would be very irresponsible.
Well, I do recall working a fraud case up in western New York, up in the lumber areas, what do you call them? I don't want to say lumberjack, but logging areas where this employer hired illegal aliens, and one was allegedly hurt, and we had proven beyond any reasonable doubt that this person was in the country illegally. As a matter of fact, could barely understand or even speak the English language. He was put into the workers' compensation system because of this injury, and it was a fraudulent injury. It was a fraudulent situation to begin with. Well, when we pointed out that this individual was using a fake Social Security number, fake Social Security card, much like the current occupant of the White House, we were told that it didn't matter, and this person actually received a settlement for like $127,000, of which his attorney got a third of that. But imagine coming to this country, being in this country illegally for a few months, getting a job, and within a 2-year time period, through fraudulent means. Through fraudulent means, getting well over $100,000. It's crazy. A couple of things before we go on, Joe. I think we ought to make this a kind of a permanent, make these permanent parts of our show. The product of the show, a prep product of the show, in listener emails and letters. But I want to ask people, folks, how are you doing with your preparations? Your whether it be your pantry or whatever. How are you coming with that? Have you gone to the grocery store in the last day or two? If you have, were you able to pick up an extra can of something or an extra couple of cans of whatever? Are you doing that? I just want to remind everyone to keep doing that. And maybe, go ahead.
Just some information I got today, and some advice, I guess, is, regardless of how much food or whatever you want to store, we're going to have to remember that we might not always be able to stay where we are.
Correct.
Because of situations from government intrusion,
that's right,
takeover, to looting and rioting. So any type of preparations we make, we have to also understand that we have to possibly go mobile at some point.
Well, that's true. And now, the answer to that, of course, food-wise, would be the meals ready to eat. Those are more expensive. So, and I think I saw and there are online, by the way, there are things. There's websites, a couple of websites online where you can enter in you answer some questions, and they'll tell you whether you'd be better to leave where you're at or stay where you're at. And there's a bias towards bugging out, regardless, unless you're in this, high plain, multiple hundreds of acre land thing. But that said, the majority of us, and I have to say this, the majority of us, we really don't have any place to go. But if you have to leave in a hurry, well, you know what? You might be able to grab a bunch of things, a couple of grab bags. But that said, how are you coming with your preparations for home if you're planning a shelter in place? And I just want to bring this up in a loving way because, time is short, but you know what? We can kind of still beat the clock in a way by being smart. And the second thing is like a product of the show, which we have no interest in, by the way, no financial interest in, but this is something I came across today, and I thought, every show maybe we should just mention something that might be helpful to the listening audience. In the event of a power, and this reminded me last night when we were on doing the show and the power went on the Super Bowl, your power goes out. If you live in the north, anywhere up north, it gets cold if the power goes out. A lot of times. I mean, obviously, it gets cold. What are you going to do for heat? Well, I did find in looking for alternative heating solutions, the tanks, the propane tanks for your gas grill, those big things? Yeah. All right. Well, you can buy these attachments, this hose and these heater double tank top match lights. They're the propane heaters, basically. They attach to the top of your propane tank, and they give out like 18,000 to 30,000 BTUs in terms of heat, and they're relatively inexpensive. For like $65, you can purchase them. So if you have a propane tank, by buying these Dynaglow lights, and that's the brand name, Dynaglow, DYNAGLO, liquid propane heater lights or heaters for your top of your liquid propane tank, $65, and so that'll heat an area. It said somewhere around 400 square feet, I believe, or it heats up to a 25-foot radius, and it's safe. They're safe to use inside with common sense. So, just something to think about if you have thinking about this. If you're thinking about, well, what are we going to do for heat? There's a possibility. Dyna-Glow, liquid propane heater, double tank, top match lights. So you can just write that down and think about that. And I just want to mention that and just remind people, hey, if you're going shopping this week, grab something extra for your pantry.
All right, you guys can start calling in 661-244-9839. We'll be taking calls in the next few minutes. I just wanted to get on the mortgage issue real quick, as I see this as a important issue. 2 articles, one from Market Watch. No money down mortgages are back. It's 100% financing, the same strategy that pushed many homeowners into foreclosure during the housing bust. Banks say that those loans are safer. They're almost exclusively being offered to clients with sizable assets and often require 2 forms of collateral, the house and a portion of the client's investment portfolio, in lieu of a traditional cash down payment. In most cases, borrowers end up with 1 loan and 1 monthly payment, depending on the lender. Roughly 60 to 80% of the loan can be pegged to the home's value, with the remaining 20 to 40 on their assets. But this is a problem. And I'll post the first article in the chat and the second one here. Former Reagan budget director warns of a new housing bubble. The market may be rising, but according to one report, all not as well on the home front. David Stockman, former director of the Office of Management and Budget in the Reagan administration, insists that the housing market outlook is not as cheery as some say. I would say we have a housing bubble. Again, Stockman told the Daily Ticker, we don't have a real, organic, sustainable recovery, because in a world of medicated money by the central bank, things aren't what they appear to be. Stockman pointed to artificially low interest rates and speculation in the real estate market as the culprits. It's happening in the most speculative subprime markets, where massive amounts of fast money is rolling in to buy, to rent, on a speculative basis for a quick trade, he said. As soon as they conclude prices have moved enough, they'll be gone as fast as they came. And any kind of interest rate increase will lead to a bust. As soon as the Fed has to normalize interest rates, housing prices will stop appreciating, and they'll probably head down, he explains. The fast money will sell as quickly as they can, and the bubble will pop almost as rapidly as it appeared. And it goes on from there. And it just talks about how the high unemployment, the printing of money, the ease of an ability to get mortgages are really coming back around full circle, kind of like we're building up to what we saw in 2008, where the Henry Paulson told the Congress they'll declare martial law if they don't pass stimulus bills to fix their little economic bubble. Also, we'll talk more on it later.
Yeah, just want to make sure everyone understands the housing. We know the housing bubble, because that is a good. We need to really pay close attention to this. Followed right along with the derivatives situation. But go ahead and continue.
This piece of news here is kind of interesting, seeing where the information comes from. The UN admits solar activity may play a significant role in global warming. Okay? Now,
man, I saw this, but remember, I don't understand this at all. I mean, I don't understand where they're coming from in this piece.
Now, remember, I just read this, the UN's here wants to climate change skepticism to be dealt with as a sickness, and inpatient treatment is needed, because the Planet Under Pressure conference in London is where this was argued, cultural resistance to accepting the premise that humans are responsible for climate change. It must be recognized and treated as an inherent sociological behavior.
So if I say publicly that global warming is nothing but a hoax, it's a thing made up by Al Gore and the United Nations.
I'll call Napolitano right now.
So what you're saying is I should be treated as an inpatient in some clinic until my head gets right.
Yes, as well as gun owners, Christians, anti-UN people.
Okay.
You know, that's
right.
what they say. And the new American Psychiatric Administration's DSM-5 publication does label being religious, believing in I forget the way they word it, believing in a supernatural being or a supernatural authority is not a dissociative disorder, but
I know what the word, but I can't think of it.
Psychological disorder, possibly. They're classifying religion, people who believe in religion, people who believe in Jesus, as mentally unstable, unfit, as well as pro-gun people, anti-New World Order people, as we went through, anti-global warming, anything that goes against their satanic agenda.
Well, and again, I did not understand this at all, coming from the United Nations, with respect to how they presented this. But now looking at this and having you explain it, now that makes more sense. Okay, so now we're going to have to subjugate ourselves to a higher body, a global entity, that being the United Nations. And don't forget,
and this part, I mean, we can see how not only is, you know, in the Bible, we heard last night is being talked about a lot, that we need to separate ourselves from the world. Well, it looks like the world is going to be separating itself from us, you know? Even if you're not ready for that transition, the Lord is doing things, and he could be working through these West Point documents and the marginalization to get people aware, to get people awake, to use it to maybe poke through that programming that has been in your mind, in people's minds.
Well, one can hope that there's a divine, and I believe, well, I shouldn't say hope, but one can believe that there's a divine spiritual force that is actually working for the good to cause an awakening here. But by the way, I want to say this before it slips my mind. We have been working on populating the reading room at HomelandSecurityUS.com. You won't find it on our main menu right now. It's not there. What we're doing is we're taking all of these documents, which we reference in PDF format, and we will have, once completed, we're uploading these documents to our server. So you will find, hopefully, sometime in this week, there will be on the menu, there will be a reading room or a resource library tab. You click on that, and every document that we talk about, whether it's the DSM thing or the West Point document, you'll be able to find that in our reading room. So if we reference a document, it'll be there. We're working on populating this. There are a lot. I mean, I don't know, close to, I think, 400 megabytes worth of data that we're uploading, and we're trying to sort and categorize for your reference. So if we say the West Point document or even the MIAC report, historical documents, they'll be there for you to see and access. Joe, can I read this letter from France now?
Nope.
Okay. Oh, come on.
You're grand.
All right.
Now go ahead. It's an excellent letter.
You know what? I want to take this moment here to, this being Monday, we're kind of doing a lot of housekeeping. Received a letter from a gentleman in France, a listener in France. I'm not even going to, Tartus, France. And I just want to read this because I think it's just a fantastic listener letter, and I'll just paraphrase some of it. It's a two-page letter, but I'll be very quickly here. Just greetings, Doug and Joe, from the southwest of France. And of course, this is Tartus. It's been several months now since I met you on the internet, and I certainly want to thank you for your research and such. I'm not going to go through that. Let's see here. Okay, here's what's really important. I thought was just fantastic and interesting too. And folks listening in America, think about this. because certainly when Joe and I read it, we talked about it. We thought, wow, this is an interesting perspective. Praise the Lord. Here in France, to my knowledge, so far, after living here for 30 years, I only know of a very few men who tell it like it is. Most of them are Catholic. If there are any evangelists, and pardon, you have to forgive me.
Evangelists?
Yeah, you have to forgive me. It's I'm reading this. It's written in cursive. Very well done, by the way. But okay, if there are any evangelist Christians speaking out about these Latter-day Matters, they are certainly very well hidden. So no, think about that. Okay, no one's talking about godly things or at least this individual saying, I can't find anybody talking about the godly things. And if there are people talking about evangelical matters, they're Catholics. The Latter-day Matters virtually non-existent. I left the AG Church near us about 5 years ago, and my wife, who is the head of the Sunday school, left about 3 or 4 years ago. It was in part a problem of spiritual starvation. Wow. Okay. And that is pretty much the situation here in France, the total France. Another part of the problem is that the church is restrained legally and financially by the state. And then the next sentence, probably folks should say it all. Sound familiar? For the last couple of years or so, we have taken refuge in a small house group, but unfortunately it is not the Great Awakening. In light of the above, you can probably understand why we listen to your show and such other people, Steve Quayle, Henry Gruver, Tom Horn, Rick Wiles, Greg Evenson, and so on. Okay. And then he goes on, and he says, if I understand correctly, you folks are in Western Pennsylvania, and actually this gentleman was born just less than 30 miles from our studio, so it's a small family. And he closes by saying that he has got to concur with the guest on Rick Wiles' program recently, who stated that Obama is God's choice of an instrument of divine judgment upon America. God Almighty really has made an excellent choice, don't you think? And folks, you can think about that. It got us thinking. Even though the time of warning the American people has come and gone, in a larger sense, I do believe very firmly that sentinels are still needed to inform the remnant. And that is from David from Tardis, France. I want to thank David for that. If you're listening, thank you so very much for the kind letter. But folks,
oh goodness, I have so many emails that we could read. I mean, we could turn this into a program just reading all the fantastic, uplifting.
But I didn't read it for that matter, or for that reason. I thought it was interesting because he said about the spiritual starvation that's taking place in France. I thought, wow, first of all, that's a very eloquent way of really summarizing what's taking place all across the world. But so as we sit here in America thinking about this, it's even worse elsewhere. And not only is it worse, people are suffering from spiritual starvation. But yeah, we do get so many nice emails and so many informative emails. Well, thank you everyone for that. But,
yeah, no, it really is fantastic to see. And even though we don't respond to a lot of them, or I have them saved in a special file to respond to them, it's just amazing, and we feel just so humble, at least I do, to be receiving those messages, because they are needed,
They are. How about this, Joe, before we go to your phones, speculation still surrounds the 2 billion rounds of ammunition purchased by the Department of Homeland Security and the Alphabet Agency in recent years. But folks, you remember, right now, too, the cohorts in Congress, they're contemplating the disarming of American citizens as we speak right now. And Any type of evil black rifle, of course, is a danger in the hands of law-abiding gun owners, despite the statistics to the contrary. And just ask Piers Morgan of rock, paper, scissors fame. The school of Piers Morgan, the School of Self-Defense. But what's the purpose and motivation behind the government's continued efforts to stockpile all this firepower? We mentioned in yesterday's broadcast that we had actually accounts from police officers who have escorted these pallets of containers to pre-position outside of cities. We got an email from a police officer yesterday during last night's program that said the day before he and his partner escorted pallets of ammunition in the shipping containers north on Interstate 71 toward Columbus for disposition there. It's happening right now. What's the purpose? What's the motivation behind this continued effort to stockpile and pre-position so much firepower? Well, remember that story too, back when Obama, that little notice announcement that if elected back in 2008, he wanted to create a civilian national security force as big and as strong, as well-funded as the Defense Department. Well, he said that in Colorado on July 2nd, 2008. I'll just tell you what he said. He said, we cannot continue to rely on our military in order to achieve the national security objectives we set. We've got to have a civilian national security force that's just as powerful, just as strong, and just as well-funded. And could this be what we see happening right now? Well, we haven't heard, and I don't know, folks, have you heard any other mention of Obama's, quote, civilian national security force? Did you hear about it last year or the year before that? We haven't heard anything about it, but I'll tell you what we're seeing right now is something I believe, and Joe believes, and I think that the majority of people listening to this believe that the Department of Homeland Security, well, they've got 4 bullets for every man, woman, and child in this country. What's the official explanation? Of course, it's target practice.
It doesn't matter what the official explanation
That's right.
is. It doesn't matter what the intended purpose is. Really, in the grand scheme, we know that they're doing it. What they're using it for, obviously, is not going to be for peacekeeping. And this is why we need to keep ourselves always on guard.
Absolutely. We're the enemy, by the way. We are the enemy. And I just want to let you know we're the enemy. But just kind of, keep the thoughts. Understand that right now they are deploying these assets, these weapons, these ammunition. Mm-hmm. And take a look. The intervention into the recent intervention into the financial markets, the economy, the corporate insolvency that we're seeing, the reversals, the economic downturns that we're seeing. We're looking at an economic calamity here that's about to take place on a larger scale than any time in our history, and that is going to lead to civil unrest, social unrest, domestic civil war, we believe, and that's also going to extend into the global arena as well. I mean, it's going to be a globalist thing. You're not going to be able to run from this. You're not going to be able to go to the Bahamas, for example, and get out of the way, because it's going to affect there too. It's going to affect everywhere. But that, I just want to mention that we are seeing additional movements of these assets, and for preppers among us, consider the fallout from an economic collapse.
I don't like the word preppers. How about survivalists?
How about That's right. Yeah, it's kind of like me. I don't like. To me, like, Google is not a verb. When somebody says, "Oh, well, Google it," well, no, search for it. And you're right. Preppers is kind of almost a pejorative term.
Well, they've turned it into that. Yeah.
All right. So, but anyway, folks, just contemplate what what we need to do. And like I said, how are your preparations coming? Have you picked up just an extra jar or two of whatever? And if you picked up a jar of peanut butter 3 months ago, you'd probably saved yourself $3 or $4.
Yeah.
But, all right. So
we're going to go to the phone lines now. Thank you for your patience. We're going to go in line from time order on hold.
The order received.
So we're going to go to area code 615 first. 615, you're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Hello?
Good evening.
Yes, this is Geneva. And I was listening to you talk about the homosexual. You know, that is an abomination to God. In Leviticus, it tells that it's an abomination. And this is going to bring judgment on our country.
Indeed it will.
Yeah, I mean, the promoting of any law that goes against the laws of God will bring the same.
Brings judgment. And we have a president that apparently doesn't believe that.
No. That's right, Paula.
I think we're under God's judgment right now. Okay,
we agree with you 100%.
Enjoy your show. Bye-bye.
Well, thanks.
God bless you. Yeah, we had a little trouble there with the overtalk and the delay, and of course it sounded like it was on the Skype. Didn't it sound like Skype? I don't know, or some sort of cell phone.
I didn't catch her name, but thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for the call.
And she's right. No, we're bringing this on ourselves, and it's not just the president. I mean, there is a majority of Americans that believe that it's okay.
Yeah, I don't quite follow that logic where, once again, I don't follow the logic where Rachel Maddow can sit in front of a television camera and say, we have to ban guns because it for the children.
But it's celebrating abortions.
Right.
And the anniversary of the law allowing abortion to become legal.
Well, exactly how does that work?
Yeah, that's the problem with the propaganda versus common sense. Which side of the line do you fall on? And I know our audience has common sense, and I hope the people who come and maybe just listen to this show or who are new listeners, if you haven't learned, take those electronic devices like the TV and anything that tells you what is going on, instead of showing you the truth or they give you little bits and pieces, unplug the TV just altogether. I find that is the best way. Just get away from it, as far away from it as you can. But moving on the phone lines here, area code 920, we're coming to you next. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. 920, you are live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
All right, well, let's put the caller back on hold because I'm not sure if we're having a delay problem or what the issue is, but
we'll go to 330 up next. 330, you're live on air, the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Hi guys, how you doing tonight?
Very well. How are you?
Hey, I'm pretty good. Hi, Mr. Hagmann. Hi, Mr. Hagmann.
What's on your mind?
What's that?
What's on your mind? What's nominating your thoughts tonight?
Oh man, I couldn't even. There's so much. You talked about so much. The caller that just called in, she talked about homosexuality not being an actual sin but an abomination. I was going to call and mention that, because it's on the level of pork. When you go into the scripture, the enemies of the Hebrew slaughtered pork on the altars of the Most High. So I wanted to bring that in. And you talked about the police, and I wanted to know if we could read a scripture out of Matthew.
Go ahead. Sure.
When we look at Matthew chapter 5, we go 33 and 34. It talks about, again, ye have heard that it hath been said by them of old time, thou shalt not forswear thyself, but shalt perform unto the Lord thine oaths. In 34 it says, but I say unto you, swear not at all, neither by the heavens, for it is God's throne. Now, if we keep going, it just goes on to your answers, what you should say when you're questioned and things like that. But you had said something earlier about, Satan and government, and you had stated that your police contacts talked about driving extra equipment into Columbus, and I just wanted to know if you ever thought about this scripture when it comes to the people in uniform, because they do take an oath, and when you read the oath, I don't have it with me or up on screen, but when you read the oath isn't to God.
Correct.
So if you look at the badges that police wear, they wear pentagrams, they wear six-pointed stars. When we get into the occult science, these are marks of evil.
Well, some do, right? I mean, there are badges, there are stars, but the oath is not to God. Obviously, we understand that. But what's the point, though, you're trying to make, caller?
Well, my name's Alex. I'm sorry.
Okay, Alex.
The point I'm trying to make is these men have subjected themselves to an entity. As that woman said, she feels. I'm gonna misquote her. I believe she said something of the nature of the gates, or the gates are open, or something, or maybe that's just a thought that came into my mind. Because a lot of people are talking about this, and we know that possession, or we see through movies and stuff like that, that possession is the act of acceptance. It kind of goes to show when everything's in full throttle, like when you have your Steve, I can't remember his last name right now. When you have him on and he talks about it, when all these things are at their peak, what's going to be the job of the law enforcement officer that wears a badge, and do you think this might be do you think they will be a danger to the civilian that they are supposed to protect and serve?
As far as the personnel are concerned, being a danger to civilian, their oath, the officers, military personnel, swear an oath to protect and preserve the lives of the people.
Well, technically, to protect the Constitution.
Right, but to protect the people.
Correct.
Now, and I understand what the caller is saying. I'm pretty sure I do. And there's a couple of problems. One, them taking an oath, not to God, but to men, to uphold men's laws. And two is the problem of the laws changing, or the orders changing, to where the oath doesn't even matter. Regardless, people are going to follow orders,
right?
Kind of like you saw in Germany.
Well, Alex, look, I know a lot of really good law enforcement, God-believing Christian law enforcement officials who joined the police department to help people, thinking that they could make a difference. Okay, at least in my generation. No,
right.
I don't know. So and
like you said by that comment, in your generation, times have changed. We see now that it's protect property and serve warrants. We had the situation where there was a drowning man in the river a year or two ago, and the officers wouldn't jump in to save him.
Oh, yes, I remember that.
Yeah, we see things like Katrina and the things that are happening on New York City streets, and we see them in Arkansas. We covered an article where police are going to be out patrolling SWAT teams and assault rifles, walking down the street in the name of safety. But, we need to pray for these individuals that they find the Lord's will for them in what they're doing, whether it's the military or police or even government, because it's really out of our hands what they do.
Well, Alex, what's your take on police officers in general now?
That truthfully, they are no more than Roman soldiers. The date changed, and we're living in Rome. I don't. Go ahead.
I just was going to say, I'll agree to a point. There are a lot of police officers that are not police officers for the right reason, but there are also still a number of police officers that are good people and will defend their oath and their the people's right to live freely under the laws that.
Yeah, and Alex, you're familiar with the Oath Keepers, right? Are you familiar with the Oath Keepers?
To an extent, briefly.
Okay. Okay, the Oath Keepers are a group of law enforcement officers all across the United States, various agencies who swear to uphold lawful constitutional orders. I mean, as opposed to unlawful unconstitutional orders. And that number is growing. So there's this awareness there by a number of law enforcement officers. So, I know what you're saying, Alex. I do, because I can see the change. But
it's not just them. I mean, people are getting angrier by the day. It feels like grace is wearing off. And I understand there's good people out there, but we're going to get to a point where even the middle class, which is being destroyed on purpose, is going to be starving. People are going to do things that they normally don't do. People are going to eat things that they normally don't eat. When a paycheck's involved, and they have the weapons and they have these stockpiles lined up wherever they're told to set them up, the Bible tells us there will be a time when man won't be able to travel from city to city, and we know these are the end times, and we know they're preparing to seize each city just by the reports that come in, where they're going to set up a blockade there, a blockade there. That's just like Nazi Germany. But didn't we bring the Germans here during Paperclip? It seems like it was one big master plan, and you have to really ask who took that oath and who understands the oath that they actually took.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And that's something, Alex, to think about. And you raise an interesting, deep, very deep point. And I got to tell you, we're at the top of the hour. But I want to thank you very much for your call, Alex.
Yeah, and this is something I'm gonna try to expand on further tomorrow. What you were talking about, because I think is important, especially the biblical verse you referenced and what follows in Matthew there. Thanks, Alex, for the call. We're going to let you go.
Thank you very much, sir.
Listening to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. We'll be right back after these short messages.
Hi, folks. Doug Hagmann here. You might know me as the co-host from the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, or as a frequent guest on Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie. If you're like me, you're tired and confused over today's headlines. You just don't know where to turn for accurate, concise information about really what's going on, what's truly going on in today's society. If you don't know where to turn for accurate, well-researched, and properly vetted news, I've got a suggestion. In fact, it's a requirement. Bookmark Canada Free Press. That's CanadaFreePress.com on the internet. It's just not for Canada. It's for news across the world. Judy McLeod, founding editor, has put together a vast array of talented writers like Kelly O'Connell, Daniel Greenfield, Dr. Ilana Johnson-Powell, a lot of guest columnists, very talented writers. Folks, that's Canada Free Press at CanadaFreePress.com. Now mobile friendly. Follow on Facebook, because without America, there is no free world.
You heard me talk about Carl and Mrs. Granlund. Granlund Firearms. They've been in business for over 20 years in Campbell River, British Columbia, Canada. They provide all the supplies, all the gear for hunters, including new and used rifles, shotguns, all kinds of brands of weapons, as well as pellet guns, ammunitions, reloading supplies, clothing, scopes, binoculars, everything. If you're a hunter, everything that you need. You've got to go and pay him a visit at 522 South Dogwood in Campbell River, British Columbia. Hey, if you're close, if you live close, let's say you live in Ohio, you can do it. Pay him a visit. Drive up to Campbell River, British Columbia. But in the event, let's just say you've got some issues crossing the border, pay him a visit online. Go to HomelandSecurityUS.com, click on the link to Granlund Firearms, And there you will find it at GrandlandFirearms.com, just a complete list, gun stock list of all sorts of firearms. And you know what, folks, what a great book is. If you are into hunting, if you're into reading some gripping stories, first-person accounts, you've got to get A Tree Beyond the River, Cougar Hunting on Vancouver Island. It's a great book. I've got it in my library thanks to Carl Granlund, who wrote the book. And of course, it's an entertaining book if you are very much into the first-person account of hunting and such. The second edition is now available with new stories, more pictures, and I'll tell you, it's a great book. Get a hold of that book. And folks, pay them a visit online. That's GrandlandFirearms.com, accessible via our website at HomelandSecurityUS.com. And while you're there, sign the guest book. And of course, check it out. They're always changing their website. They're always building new things and on their website. And they've got some wonderful pictures. Tell them Doug and Joe Hagmann sent you to sign their guest book, and tell them hello.
Doug Hagmann, one guy that doesn't need a bullhorn to get your attention.
You want answers! I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to our third and final hour of this Monday, February 4th edition of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. First 2 hours went by real fast. We covered a lot of news, got some phone calls. We're going to go for the rest of the show, getting to your phone calls. Just a few articles I'm going to hit in between calls. This one, Chicago police changing response plan for 911 calls. Starting this week, Chicago police are changing their responses to 911 calls. No longer will they come right away to reports of things like damage to property, carjackings, garage burglaries, or other crimes in which the suspect is no longer on the scene or the victim is not in immediate danger. They say the move will free up the equivalent of 44 police officers a day for patrol duties. CBS 2's Jim Williams spoke to some Chicagoans who think it's the wrong move for the police. On a block where burglars broke into a home on Christmas Day, Cameron Curio has a strong opinion on the city's new 9/11 response plan. I think that's ridiculous. I think if there's a burglary, they have got to come. It's what they are paid for. They have to come, she said. It goes on to say people are upset. They want to talk to a police officer. They want to know something is being done to prevent this in the future. Sposato said she is a constituent on the Northwest Side. They say we pay very high property taxes, so it's not asking too much for a police visit after the break-in or a traumatic event. This is just another example of what many towns have done in saying, we can't police everything. We need to be basically they need to generate revenue. So they'll be more concerned with writing speeding tickets, writing summons for whatever else, they're going to write. And
I've got a good
revenue
friend.
Generate.
I got a good friend in the New York State Police. He's a New York State Trooper. He said this. Now he's actually a commander in the New York State Police. He said that they are busier now, not respond. I mean, they will. Basically, they're letting the local police or the sheriff's department handle the burglaries, the trespassing, the normal things. They have been, and this was last week I talked to this individual. He said they have been instructed to increase revenue, like you just said. So the article is consistent with direct information from my friend who said, and by the way, this is his last year. He's retiring. Graduating.
They get quotas,
and I can't tell you, that makes me feel old. I could retire if I was doggone it. Anyway, the quotas, he mentioned that. He said, for really, that used to be a myth where there were quotas, at least in his area of operation. But now they have budgetary objectives that they're trying to attain, and they do it. For example, it used to be, and folks understand this, it used to be where if you were traveling, let's say, 12 miles over the speed limit and the cutoff was 11 miles, and it made a difference, they would cut you a break. Now they're not cutting you that break anymore, at least in that area of the New York State Police. So think about that. And so people say, well, I won't go there, but think about that. That's very important to understand and know.
Yeah. All right, we're going to go back to the phone lines. We're going to go to...
And by the way, we're doing fine. You don't have to ask us.
We are going to go to 719. I think this is Donna. Donna, you're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Hello, gentlemen. I'm glad you're doing good. I do pray for you. I enjoy your show, and your show last night was great. I called in, and one of the things I was wondering about, and perhaps, Doug, you could answer this, is if the police are not going to be coming. I've been broken into, by the way, a lot, and I beefed up security with ADT and that sort of thing. Is it possible that by not... Okay, let me try and do this. I'm not as eloquent as you guys are.
Don't worry about
I don't. I don't own a gun, right? So I have no way of defending myself, at least in that vernacular. I could try the Home Alone kind of thing. But if the police don't come out and respond to break-ins, and you feel threatened and whatnot, and people start getting angry, and is it a way to make us feel less protected so that we'll beg for like martial law or anything to feel safe kind of thing?
Boy, you know what, Donna, I really didn't think of it from that perspective, from that angle. And Joe, I don't know if you did either, but basically, it is my understanding it's more of a fiscal or a budgetary issue now. But having said that, I think the unintended consequence is maybe, just maybe, if the police aren't helping, yes, and there is, especially in urban areas, maybe that's an unintended consequence at the very least. And folks, I don't know what you think out there listening to this, but wouldn't that be something if you feel threatened? And the police are, unable to respond, or at least that's what they tell you. Maybe you will beg for, I don't know, the National Guard or some sort of police force on your block or in your town.
Well, I'm thinking that. I have a lady at work, a lot of single ladies around us, and I could tell you if the thugs keep breaking into our houses and stealing and threatening us, I could see where, if we can't protect ourselves, we're going to start saying, well, we got to do something. The other thing, I was checking Rick Wild's show, and he came across something that I think if you're a grandparent or a parent, they need to watch, which is called overruledmovie.com, and it's about your parental rights. It's something a must-see for, I think, all people that have children or grandparents. And with that, I'll send you.
What was that, Donna? What was that website?
It was a movie. It's overruledmovie.com.
Okay.
It was Rick Wild's show where I got it. Overruledmovie.com. It's about parental rights, or I should say lack of parental rights.
Rick Wiles, by the way, is the host of True News. And,
yes, that's where I got it, True News. Yeah.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
So just go to True News, TRUnews.com, and he's got a wonderful page where you can see where you'll be able to find what Donna's talking about there at TrueNews.com. Wow. So we as parents or as grandparents, our parental and grandparental rights are being endangered by government policies, what you're saying.
Well, according to what I was listening to, and then I went and watched it, it's all leading up to a UN agenda, which sounds real cute. It's something, gosh, I'm terrible about this. It's like the UN agenda for children's civil rights, something like that. You can look it up. But it's part of a UN agenda. But right now there's so many filtering. They're working their way up to this. That is the ultimate thing. We haven't signed on to this referendum or whatever they call those things in the UN, but it's with the current president and his willingness to sign everything over to the UN, I don't think it's going to be far off. But right now there's a lot of things that, for instance, hypothetically, this child, in the beginning of the documentary, the parents are, obviously the child comes home with some literature regarding same-sex marriage couples, and their child is 5 years old in kindergarten. Whether you're a Christian out there listening or not, I'm a Christian, of course that would affect me, but my son and daughter-in-law are not, but think about it, they're 5-year-olds. They're basically squares, colors, ABCs. Sexuality is something I don't even think that they should be addressing with 5-year-olds. And, of course, the mother and father are upset, and it accounts what really happened to them. And that was the most astonishing thing, is the husband ends up getting hauled off by the police from the school. And it's pretty, watch it. It is really incredible. But the idea that they wanted to introduce this little booklet about, I think it was 2 male parents, and 2 5-year-olds. And again, if you remember, I don't know, Bridget Gabrielle talked about, being a Muslim for a day, which was a part of a curriculum they were doing in schools. And, apparently we have the separation of church and state. However, when it comes to their agendas, they seem to overlook certain things. I just think it's interesting when you look at, and also if you go to the Fuel Project, as I mentioned, they do looking at the New World from a biblical perspective, and they go over the United Nations, and that was quite, it's very educational. But I think looking, the United Nations has their own agenda, and they have their Temple of Understanding. That's their religious format, and that's something people can just look up. And, I really don't know what religion they're going to enact. They definitely are working towards some sort of one world religious sort of thing. And also, by the way, I was able to share through sharing with my aunt in Los Angeles area, and that's the Christian side of the family. I led them to you, and then she was introduced to Steve Quayle, and she just loved you guys. She was very thankful. She's like, wow. She didn't realize what was going on. So you have a whole new group of people in L.A. They're going to be listening to you. So with that, I'll get off and let the other callers speak.
Wow. Well, thanks for sharing our program, and really that's how we've been growing, and we thank the listeners, thank you, and obviously thank God, because we could not do this on our own. All we're trying to do is help people understand what's really going on out there, and point people in the direction of what's really truly important news items amid this white noise of all this stuff that can overwhelm you. You sit down in the morning with a cup of coffee at your computer, click on the Drudge Report, and you get all these links and all these headlines, and it's like, well, what's important really? And it's sometimes, you have to sift through all this white noise to get to the real nuggets of information.
Just put on the full armor of God before you start and do your prayers.
Yeah, oh, boy.
That really helps.
I gotta tell you, you have to really, don't you? I mean, it's because it's really a mind bender out there. And when you know what, Donna, when you're talking about children, one thing that we've found, and I thought this was all really fairy tales, but really there are the UN is actually facilitates, and I know I'm going to get a lot of flack on this, a lot of emails, but there's child kidnapping rings and I mean things that you would think that it's crazy talk, but really there's this stripping away of the parental and grandparental unit for the oversight by the state of children, and that leads to things like kidnapping. It's crazy. It really
great movie that came out. It's not a Christian movie, but I found it. It was called The Whistleblower with Rachel Weisz, and it's based on a true story. She was a cop. She goes over to, I believe it was what is that? But the Serbian area as a policekeeping force, and she ends up finding this whole where they were kidnapping women for sex and prostitution, sex slaves, and she, of course, comes back and breaks the news, but I don't think anybody took her seriously. But it is a good movie. I cringe now when I hear people say, "Oh, peacekeeping force for this area from the UN." I mean, after watching that movie, it was, it was just, it devastates me. I mean, but it is a true story. It was based on a true story. So what you're saying is not crazy.
Tell people the name of that movie again, Donna.
It's called The Whistleblower, and the star is Rachel Weisz, and it's about this cop who goes over as a peacekeeping force to that, I don't know how you say the country, Serbia, that area. And it was her story. And she does get out. She does get out and tell everybody, but the UN was right there to try to, of course, disinformation, how they do their thing, but they did make the movie, and it is very eye-opening to and it's not for children. It is not for children. I would say adults only. I mean, no, it's creepy, it's scary, it's not something I would even want teenagers to see. I would say watch it first.
Wow. Well, Donna, it's an amazing thing. For the children, it takes on an entirely different meaning, and I don't mean to be crass when I say that. There are people out there that are so evil, and it's hard to really comprehend the evil that's out there, especially when it comes to children. So you're right. When you do go through the news, you do have to put on your spiritual Ephesians armor, if you will, and really go through this, because it's horrific. And any grandparent or parent listening to this and understand that this is real. It really is.
And the sad thing is that I don't think people realize the pervasiveness of the evil, and the other thing is the people that are helping these people get into power are going to be the first ones they get rid of. And if you look through history, they should be able to see that. Hitler did it. I think Stalin or Lenin did. I mean, every single totalitarian system, they're evil. Every time all the people that help them, all these wonderful people that think they're going to get something, whether they're movie stars or whatever, they're expendable once they get what they want. They get rid of them. And all they have to do is look through history. They've done it every single time, and yet, I don't know. I really don't understand that part at all, but, I'm just going to keep praying to the Lord Jesus.
Keep praying, keep your faith, and
I thank you guys for being there every night. I really do appreciate it.
We thank you for being there, because without you and others like you, we wouldn't be here, or we wouldn't have to be here, or we just wouldn't be here, period. And we want to thank you very much. God bless you.
Okay, thanks, Donna.
God bless you both. Thank you.
Have a great day.
You too.
All right, we're going to go back to the 920 area code 920. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
920. We can barely hear you. You're up.
All right, we're going to move on here. And we're going to go to Pierre. Pierre, thanks for holding. You are live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Evening, Joe. Evening, Doug. How are you two doing?
Very well, Pierre.
Hey.
Can
you guys hear me?
We can hear you. You got to help us out of this. You got to help us out of this morass that we're in. This negativity of news and information. Help us out. shed some light on some things, Pierre.
It's like what I say all the time. Whenever you have any issues with your communications, the first thing that pops in my head is NSA CSS, because they're the only ones who have the technology to go and jam you the way they do. They're the only ones who can really flip the switch and make things staticky or break up the signal. They can cause overloads. It's all part of ECM, electronic countermeasures, or electronic warfare, EW. And they also specialize in ELINT and SIGINT. I'm not saying anything here that's classified, so if they want to give me some grief, bring it. For those of you who don't understand it, there is a thing called ELINT, which stands for Electronic Intelligence, and there's a thing called SIGINT that stands for Signals Intelligence. It's just basically the methods of gathering intelligence electronically on individuals or picking up signals, i.e. radio frequencies, and they are able to ascertain who's who. They can do intercepts without people realizing it and be able to do what they got to do. Right now, this is all just soft. There's nothing hard about this. There's nothing lethal. It's really more of an annoyance and an inconvenience, but at the same time, it's the proverbial knock on a door saying, "Hi, we're here, we're listening." So
we've been told, Pierre. We were told, Pierre, that they were going to drive us nuts. I'm paraphrasing now. I'm not quoting, but we were told that they were going to do things to annoy us, drive us nuts, and to make it very difficult for us at times, just to let us know that they're there. And it's ridiculous, I mean, but we were told that.
Yeah, and this is the nature of the beast. That's all it is. It's just the nature of the beast. So it's just something that we all need to get used to, but it's not something that anyone should take lightly, because it's just another aspect of psychological operations. And in this aspect, it would be to desensitize everyone that's listening, or those in the chat room, just desensitize and say, oh, it's them, it's no big deal. It'd be the same thing. It's the equivalent of what you've been seeing or hearing about military operations being conducted in certain metropolises where they're opening up with blank rounds. It's to desensitize people, but at the same time, it's to galvanize a response. Well, in terms of electronic warfare, about the only response you're going to be able to do is if you guys know some hackers and they do their thing with the NSA, and there you go. But that's just not going to work, because the NSA does have some of the best assets out there to counter that. And that makes them both an asset and a liability, or an enemy. I mean, there was stories I've read about how, I forgot who it was, but there was a gentleman who was on the inside who knew quite a bit of what was going on with the NSA, and these guys were good. The NSA at one point was really doing the good job. All their ears were pointed outwards to hear what was coming towards us. And then one day, by some kind of project directive, everything got shifted inward. So now they listen to us. They monitor us. You people who buy your smart TVs and you have your phones and what have you, like I said, it's okay to have the technology. It's okay to appreciate it and enjoy the fruits of your labors in terms of buying such a device. But remember, there's a Trojan horse that's involved with this. It is, you will not be able to know or be able to ascertain when you're being monitored. You won't be able to know.
Right.
And they can look right through your smart TVs at you, and you would have no idea. In your car.
Pierre, let me ask you this: you're familiar with Infinity microphones? Infinity microphones.
I've heard of them.
Okay, I didn't know if they were still in use. What I'm talking about, folks, is now this is the old school surveillance where somebody could actually dial your phone number. Your phone would not ring, but it would activate the on the hook switch the voice, where you're talking to, would activate that as a microphone, and everything that's within earshot of that telephone could be heard by the person calling that number. And it was a marvelous device for spying for good. However, it turned out to be, when I say marvelous, I'm talking about it was good. I mean, for people in the spy business, but I just didn't know if it was still in use. But I suppose that they probably have something much more effective than that now.
Well, if it is in use, no one's talking about it.
Okay, all right.
And there would be no real way to know.
Well, I'm talking probably 1980s technology. So, like I said, I'm sure that we've got something much more efficient
and more sophisticated. It's like this: it's anything that you have out there in the civilian world, like cell phones and what have you, that's been released to the general public for consumption. You also must take into account what the military-industrial complex has developed. Everything that is coming out on the market is 3 decades behind what the MI has. Okay, so you can only assume that, well, if we got a cell phone, you can only figure out what a 30-year advanced cell phone must be like. Or, when CDs came out back in the day, the Central Intelligence Agency had CDs that were way back when. So you can only imagine what they have now. And mind you guys, it doesn't mean that what I'm saying about the people who are in these complexes and in these businesses are bad. I want to make this perfectly clear with everyone who's listening, including All Ears, Uncle Sam, and DHS. But you all who are listening on us and mocking us and are spewing your bile on us are wrong. And I know there's plenty of you within the ranks that know this. And you quietly go about your business as best you can to either ignore it with your little mirror shades on, or you're part of a little resistance group within the organizations. I can see fifth column movements happening like that. It wouldn't surprise me at all. They just can't say anything because counterintelligence assets are being used to curtail these people from saying anything. Hence the issues of whistleblowing going on. Whistleblowers wind up getting snuffed one way or another, where they get discredited publicly or something violent happens to them in a, quote, coincidental or freak-like nature. It's not something to be trifled with, people, because you have to understand, for those of us that are standing for good, that stand for the Lord, that stand for what this country once was under the auspices of the Lord, these people are under a microscope that's over there. You have to understand. So, hence, there should be sympathy for the people that are within those ranks. But for the most part, those that are just, they don't care, they go with whatever, the way the wind blows. All I can say to them is they're beyond apathetic. These are the people who have reneged on their word, on their oath. Because whether you're in the military or you're in a civilian law enforcement agency, whether it's CIA, NSA, FBI, whatever, or the Marine Corps or the Navy or the Coast Guard, you all took oath, you swore it. It's not something to be taken lightly. And for those that do and have switched to the other side, you are all forsaken. You need to be thinking about what that means about being forsaken. You have to understand that. It's important. It's not good to be forsaken. The light doesn't shine on you anymore. You're in the darkness and you're on your own. It doesn't pay to be like this, because at some point, those who betray their countries, those who betray their own people will be made to pay a price. The people who want to come in here and take over what we have by right of financial dominion will eliminate these people because they won't trust them. It's simple. How can they trust anyone who betrayed their own people? Bottom line.
True.
And that's not a good thing. That's not a good thing at all. But everyone thinks that they're go. Everyone thinks that everything's going to be fine. That's not the case. On to the other subject here real quick. What happened with that SEAL really put the hook in me, and it really pissed me off. Of course he knew things, obviously. But I'm getting to the point where I'm so angry seeing members of Naval Special Warfare getting offed. I'm tired of seeing members of our elite forces getting knocked off. I remember, there's missions that these guys do, and sometimes the missions don't go right. You don't hear about it because it's swept under the rug for a reason, for national security and, execution of U.S. foreign policies and so forth, blah, blah, blah. But now what we're looking at here is the blatant, deliberate sanctioning of these individuals. And all they did was swore an oath and to defend this country. They didn't expect to have their helo blow up, with them in it. Or I'm sure the sniper who was doing his training with a friend of his on the range didn't expect to get rounds plugged into him by a Marine, which really pisses me off because I'm a Marine. So that's kind of that's more than a black eye to the Marine Corps. And that reeks of psyops as far as I'm freaking concerned. Mind control, you call it what you will. There's no reason why that Marine should have off that field. None. And it just reeks completely of psyops and mind control. Just my opinion, folks, but I know how things operate to a large extent, and that's what that is. But no one will ever own up to it. No one will. But I'll tell you what, take a good look at the man's profile. Look at his picture when he got his mugshot taken. You determine if this guy was under some kind of control, some kind of mind control or something. It just, like I said, it made no sense. It made no sense.
Pierre, no, I think you're 100% correct, and I want to sneak something in here, a little
Sure.
off topic, off of off of Chris Kyle. Although we do need to, and in fact, we're going to be talking about all of the I'll use your word, sanctions of the assets. The high-profile assets over the last several months. But let me sneak in a question here. One of our listeners mentioned you in an email and said perhaps you could even verify this. The military training, because of your background, the paramilitary training that we're seeing, the overflights of helicopters down urban streets, Miami, Houston, other places, could it be, or could one of the objectives be to draw fire from survivalists, if you will, or constitutionalists? Could that be one of the objectives of these operations?
Oh, absolutely. I know if I was in one of those helos and I was told, okay, hey, we're going to be flying over, we're going to be doing this, shooting blanks, but if you happen to take fire or switch to live rounds, you can bet dollars to dimes those guys have live ammo drums set ready to go. They'll switch it in a heartbeat, and they're going to find out who it is, and they're just going to lay in on them.
I agree. No, we were told that we were told, Pierre, that on board, even though they were firing blanks, if you will, on board, that they had live ammunition.
Oh, of course they would. Of course they would, because it's part of it's all part of the op order. You know, whatever your operations order is, the plan. You get what's called a 5-paragraph warning order. Again, none of this is classified. You go through what is called SMEAC. The acronym SMEAC stands for Situation, Mission, Execution, Administration, Command, Control, and Logistics. And essentially, in that order, you know what you are going to do, whether it's at the divisional level, battalion, company, so forth. And then within that, you have sub-paragraphs that explain in detail what you need to do in case said scenario happens, like option A or option B. Getting shot at by domestic groups that are firing at you, then you would have the right to use deadly force. Well, if anyone wants to know what the definition of deadly force in the military is, back when I was in, deadly force is that force which is used for the purpose of causing, or which is known, or should be reasonably known, to constitute the substantial likelihood of causing either death and or serious bodily harm. And these men will execute those orders, because you got to remember one thing: they have a family to go back to. They have their buddies to save. And they'll be damned if they're going to be taking rounds down range while they're firing blanks off, and their bird goes down that could potentially kill other people. I mean, any number of wrong possibilities can happen. Now, for those that are listening to me, don't think that I'm taking the side of the bad guys here. I'm just merely explaining how an operation like that would run and why these guys do what they're doing. But if, and I say if, these guys were flying and their orders were to do this over populated areas to draw out fire, then we've got a problem. Because all it's going to take is that one shot. Like I told everyone before in the chat room, and I said it on the air, we're waiting for that second shot that has to be heard around the world. It's going to come. I wonder, would it be someone who's just so sick and tired of seeing the birds flying in the sky, or is so afraid, and they hear the shots that enough is enough? What if it is a veteran that has PTSD? I'm sorry, even every now and then, if I heard a backblast coming out of the car, I'm on the ground trying to get cover, or I'm grabbing for a rifle I don't even have because it brings back memories from my experiences. But what if someone really does have it? On the flip side, you may have someone who has no military experience. That's a civilian. That's pretty darn good with firing a centerfire rifle and purposely targets one of those birds. You know how easy it is to hit the crew chief who's manning the gun because his head is poking out as he's trying to shoot his minigun off or something? You pop him, done, and then it's all going down.
Yes.
These are the options that everyone who's listening needs to know. Because if they're thinking this, they're expecting it, and you as the people should also be very well aware as to how this could potentially go down. And it's frightening because we're at a point, Doug and Joe and everyone that's listening, it's like what I said, the fuse is so short, and there's this massive tinderbox. And all you got to do is just light it, and it's going to go boom. Someone is going to do it. Now, whether it's the bad guys that'll intensify a false flag operation, or it's a wayward civilian who's just afraid and had enough, it doesn't matter. Because at that point, once the round goes down range, you got to stop asking the questions. You got to stop inquiring, and you need to start taking action, whether it's direct action or indirect action. And you guys got
no, you're right.
You got to be aware. I mean, what is the saying that the Lord says? My people perish for lack of knowledge. And I keep saying that over and over and over again in my head, and I say this to people that I meet from time to time who ask me questions on stuff like this. And the reason is that the Lord communicates with everyone in different ways, much like how He communicates with you and Joe, or like how He does with Steve and Greg and the other guests that we've heard. But I'm not saying I'm a conduit of the Holy Spirit, folks. I'm not saying that at all. That's the height of hubris, and that's not how I am. But
well, I think we're all vessels.
I believe, Doug, though, that the knowledge that I'm getting has got to help. Like I said, it's not classified, but this is something that most people just don't know.
Oh, no, you're right.
And when this thing goes down, it's going to be bad. That's why I tell people, hey, get yourselves spiritually set. Get yourselves right. If you don't have the supplies you need, try to get what you can. Don't do sales and advertising, folks, and letting people know what you have. You know, there's a thing called the NDRP, which I think was the National Defense Resources Preparedness Act. I'm sure you guys heard of it, where it's the deal where they find out who the preppers are, and they can go knock on your door, find out that you got all this food, and, oh, hey, by decree of executive order of President Barack Obama, we are now going to be confiscating your food and water. Oh, we're going to take your ammo, too. And, oh, by the way, come with us. They can.
Well, that's right.
Folks.
And that's where, Pierre, that's where discernment comes in. Although we say, look for like-minded people and, create alliances, if you will, with your neighbors, your friends. You have to use discernment when you're doing that. So, because if your neighbor, for example, knows you've got, stockpile of ammunition or defensive weapons or food or whatever it might be, they could turn you in if they're hungry. Lord knows what they could do, for an extra week's worth of food in their case. So you don't know. So you're right. And there goes your food. There goes in one visit. There goes all of your preparations out the door, plus you. So you're right.
The best thing I could say for people too that are in the areas where these operations are going, it's very simple, and you could do a lot of exposure on this, folks, and I completely endorse it. Don't wait for the mainstream media to do it. If you got your phones, hey, use them to your advantage. Go to video on your phones. If you have your camcorders out, zoom in on these birds. See if you can find out who's who and what's what. But watch what's going on, and if they open fire with blanks, then have that. Put it on YouTube. Make it go viral, because the more you start doing this, the more you start getting people aware of what's going on. Put the righteous comments down. Don't allow yourself to be completely subjective in what you're going to say. The more objective you are in your point of view, the more you're going to get attention on what's going on, or say nothing at all and let the event play itself out, like a movie. For those of you who are living in occupied held territories, you know what I'm talking about, where the Russians are. You guys know where they're at. Get as much, intel on what's going on there. And I'm sure they're listening too. GRU Spetsnaz.
Oh, I'm sure.
GRU Spetsnaz. And in case people have not realized it, the GRU Spetsnaz elements that are here in the United States, they're not here temporarily, folks. They're under orders to be here. This is a permanent post for them. The United States of America is a permanent station for these guys. And that's not even counting the other elements that are mixed out here. And for those that live near the southern border regions, just keep your eyes and ears open, because word has it that there's PLA bases out there, People's Liberation Army of China, bases around different areas of northern Mexico and southern Mexico. And it's no big surprise that the PRC, the People's Republic of China, owns all the ports of Mexico. So don't be surprised if you find troops out there. I mean, word's already out that there have been a sighting of troops that have flown on in that were officers in Chinese military uniforms somewhere here in America. It doesn't get any more clearer than this. I'm not preaching paranoia or, quote, fear-mongering, as the establishment would call it. It's the truth. The more you guys understand that the enemy is here on our boots on the ground, the better you should be getting yourselves ready for what is to come, because our combat troops aren't coming back unless they have been wounded grievously, come back in flag-draped coffins, or they're rotating out in terms of end of service. But for the bulk of our forces, they are going everywhere, and Africa is the campaign. It's going to get deep. And the more our combat forces are out overseas with less defense over here, you guys do the math. I mean, the Southern Radar net's gone down. There's issues I've heard of the Northern Radar net was down for a little bit. Why? Because they are allowing these forces to fly on in. And it's always something. Don't think for a second that people who are in the military, our military, are completely in the dark. They even hear what's called scuttlebutt, which is rumor. That's what scuttlebutt is. They've heard scuttlebutt of things. And I'm sure they're very well aware, and they're scared too. Everyone is scared. Everyone is on edge. But let's not lose our heads. And that's the most important thing I think I could say to everyone, is don't lose your heads. Because you start losing your heads, you start running around with chickens with your heads cut off, you're going to be doing actions that don't need to be done. You're going to find yourselves compromised. You're going to find yourselves either incarcerated or dead. I'd rather people be locked on, understand what's going on, watch the situation happen, then take appropriate action, than go off the handle and be nuts. And as for the economic collapse you were talking about, Doug and Joe, I've heard from different shows, everything from Max Kaiser to Gerald Celente to John Moore, and their sources, it's coming. I heard March, April, right around that.
The same thing we heard.
March,
yeah,
April,
same thing we heard.
We're talking March, April 2013. And so if that happens, folks, that's a domino effect. That should be the biggest red flag right there if anyone isn't locked on. Get your assets out of the banks if you can. Kill off your IRAs, take what you can. It's like what Steve said, 70% is better than having 100% of nothing. Get what you can while you can, folks, because part of the executive orders that were written is that the banks will be taken over by the government in times of national security threats. And guess what? It's here. It just hasn't been fully declared yet. So there's a lot of moving parts. You guys just got to figure out what part you want to go into, examine it, and then that will open up the doors to the other part. It's like following the money trail. The only difference is you're following information. And let me tell you something, folks. It isn't about the money or the gold or silver that's the biggest thing. If you've got the information is worth more than all the gold and silver and precious metals in the world. Information is key because information is going to dictate survival or death, victory or defeat. The more information you have, real information, not mainstream regurgitated media information, but the real deal, the better you'll be able to make an informed decision. If you have relatives that say, conversely, I think you're nuts, blah, 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 then don't talk to them. Just continue on doing what you're doing, and then when the reality of things happen, then hopefully they'll come your way. If not, you guys got to cut your losses. You do. I know family is everything, but what can you say? Yes.
No, you're right on, Pierre, with what you're saying, and I want to thank you for your call. We got about 10 minutes left, and we're going to move on. We'll be talking soon. You take care of yourself, okay?
As always, 100%, man.
Take care, guys.
All right, man. Yeah, and folks, Pierre is a good, very, very good source of information. Some people know his history. He's a very well vetted source and very well respected. But
moving along here, 832 area code. We're coming to you next. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Hi, is that me?
That is.
Can you hear me? Oh, hey, I wanted to comment on a couple of things that he was saying. The ex-Marine that was just killed. Well, he was one of three. He was one of three who were entrepreneurs, who were vets, and who were involved in pro-gun activities of some sort of training or selling or buying or that sort of thing. 3 of them killed in 1 month in Texas.
Chris Kyle, Keith Ratliff, and John Noveski.
Yeah. But we haven't been hearing it on the mainstream news, but I think they're targeting these people. I definitely think they're targeting these people. And also, I can't remember what his name was, but he was talking about, the collapse and everything. Well, I was trying to find it. It seems like every time that I try to email to myself, it mysteriously disappears from my trash. From my emails. But in 2008, I came across an article, and it's called Repo, R-E-P-O, like if you repossess something, and the letters stand for Reid, Edwards, Pelosi, and Obama. And what this thing is they were saying in this article that one of the things that they were doing is they formulated this plan where they were going to confiscate everybody's 401ks and IRAs and that sort of thing. But they really have more power in it than that. And what they can actually do, it's like $1.7 trillion of personal assets that are by the Americans, bank accounts, savings accounts, different types of things like that. And I was listening on John Moore, and he was talking about what happens when they are going to confiscate these funds. And he was saying you're going to start seeing a lot of articles about foreign hackers. And I have been seeing so many articles about foreign hackers. It says that they're going to they're going to shut down the Internet, for a few days. They're going to call a bank holiday. And when that happens, they're going to take the money. And people are going to come out of it, and then they're going to blame it on the Iranians or somebody like that. But the main thing is that all the wealth will be gone. And I have been seeing so many of these things, and they're talking about foreign hackers, and I'm like, oh, my God, John was right on the money on this. But if
was.
anybody's going to get their money out, they need to do it because it's getting ready. I mean, think about it. I mean, all of a sudden they give themselves a $1.7 trillion raise overnight. And you know that that's not going to be reimbursed.
No, you're exactly right. And for listeners that never heard this before, and we probably should have done more speaking or talking about this, Reed, Edwards, Pelosi, and Obama joined forces to form Repo Incorporated. It was a show of solidarity back in 2008.
Well, and not only that, they did it to get Obama elected. That was one of the primary objectives to it. And then Pelosi and Obama and Pelosi in this article, I really ought to send it to you guys. I mean, I have it on my office computer. But you know, they're saying in there, Pelosi saying, well, now that we own all the banks and we socialized health care, we can do all this to everybody. You know, and Obama's saying our Democratic motto is we have what it takes to take what you have. I mean, they're literally bragging about this in this article. It's just infuriating. But they're planning it, and they're going to be doing it very soon.
Exactly. Just to make sure, I just want to tell people. Initially, when this came out, people thought it was a joke. People thought it was satire. People thought it was. In fact, I think maybe Snopes even did something on this. But the bottom line is, no. This is something that was a solidarity, a show of solidarity, and an actual organization, if you will, to where the government would take your 401ks, replace it with like a 5% or a 3% payback. So people have to know that what you're saying is true. I just wanted to let people know that. So I didn't mean to take your time away from you, but.
Oh, that's all right, absolutely. But it was planned all along, and they were talking in the article about how it would be better for the American public because the interest rates are going to be exorbitantly higher. So you know that was all planned to begin with, too. You know, raising all the tax rates. I mean, people were so shocked, that all of a sudden we're going to have more taxes taken out from the middle class. But we know he's trying to decimate the middle class. I mean, that's what Fabian socialists do. There's only two kinds of classes, the workers and the elite. So.
That's
but
true.
It's
like we said at the beginning of the program about how top down, bottom up, and how the middle class or us, we're going to be just extinguished. Yes.
Yeah, and that's what he said too. He said if you're going to when you're starting a new, Obama was talking about that. He said when you're starting a new, I don't know, I can't remember what he called it in the article, but he said you have to start from the bottom and work up.
Yeah.
And he meant it. I mean, he told everybody in 2008 what he was going to do. Doesn't anybody remember at the Denver Broncos stadium, he had everything looking like a Greek background with the Grecian columns and everything, and then he had himself rising up out of the floor, like he was some sort of god or something. He was telling the whole world that he was going to bring Greece to America, and now look at it. Millions and millions of people out of work. 47 million people on food stamps and government assistance. I mean, it just runs the gamut. The gas prices have doubled. Food has gone up. I mean, everything. We are Greece.
Boy, how eloquent you are in your delivery. Thank you so much for that. You said a lot, and my goodness, you're absolutely right, man. You're absolutely
well. There's one more
correct.
thing I wanted to say that I'm furious about. I came across an article on John McTiernan's website, and it says the Muslim Brotherhood Group to connect to all U.S. schools partners with state education departments on international initiatives. Were you aware of this? You were?
Absolutely. That began, I think, in 2010. Initially, the architecture
with William Ayers and Obama.
Yes.
Well, now they're in 100. They're in 100 schools. These people. They take the Muslim Brotherhood. They kidnap their own kids from neighborhoods, from refugee camps. They get them at gunpoint out of their homes. They put them through these horrible practices to teach them to get ready for war. And some of them don't even survive it. I mean, they're subjected to violent treatment in preparation for war. And those that do make it, that actually do survive it, they deploy them to the front lines. Their duties include serving as decoys, human triggers to clear landmines, detectors of enemy positions, bodyguards, sex slaves. They're used to cook and carry supplies. And now these people want our children?
Yeah,
I mean, I think
right.
that this is a free. It's like God has turned us over to the homosexuals and the Muslims. I know we're under judgment, but it's just incredible to me that because it's a war on our children.
You're right, exactly right. And we're at the end of the program. I want to say thank you very much for your call.
You're welcome.
What a great call. Thank you so very much.
Have a good night.
Thank you, guys. You too. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, guys, we are at the end of the program. How fast that time went.
Wow.
I want to thank each and every one of you for listening tonight. We will be back tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern Time sharp, so don't be late. And we're going to cover the rest of the news we didn't get to today, plus whatever comes our way tomorrow. God bless each and every one of you. Stay safe and have a great night.
Good night, everyone.